Yes.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
I will transition. And start to what were you going to?
I was going to handle some logistics for you. She's a do-it-all kind of lady. She's always ready as a leader. But would our panelists come up? The administrator knows you all so well. Cleo Barger.
Well, if I could introduce you to them too, if you wouldn't mind. So I first want to tell you about a story that really has touched me as the administrator. I travel around the country. And of course, I want to deliver when it comes to capital access for women entrepreneurs. Jeni Britton, with Jeni's Ice Cream, of course, is a heralded success story of a woman who started in a flea market in Columbus, Ohio, envisioning an ice cream that now, of course, the President of the United States, as we heard yesterday, is addicted to, as am I. But this is a founder who was scrappy and figured it out day by day, pursuing her dream and vision of what the company should look like, from the special focus on sustainability to how she employs the workforce and empowers her workforce. And so, Jeni is an incredible founder that got SBA assistance in the very beginning, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later. But I want to welcome Jeni Britton from Jeni's Ice Cream, who's built a multi-million-dollar business. So and in my travels, I also was able to meet the incredible Cleo Barger. And I don't know if you noticed yesterday when the president was speaking and he talked about HR 50/50, he talked about the fact that women used to have to depend on their husband for a signature, and she connected with him and said that was her. She started in the 80s as probably the first African-American woman in manufacturing aerospace industry, and really a remarkable story of tenacity and success that she and her partner built this multi-million-dollar company, leveraging SBA's resources from our 8A program to step and trade as she's graduated and moving on to the world. And so Cleo Barger, will you please welcome us from Midstate Aerospace? The president has talked about the small business boom. We're very proud of the fact that 10.5 million business applications were filed. That's 84% higher than any 2-year period on record. And so we wanted to introduce you to one of those founders that I met along my journey in Minnesota, Minnetonka, Minnesota. Am I pronouncing that right? I got to actually work in this incredible child daycare center. These young founders who started in 2021 as part of the small business boom, were former bankers who actually envisioned an entrepreneurial pathway to them. They saw the applications coming in through the bank and said, you know what, we could do this too. And so that belief in themselves is what started it. Also, they're the ones who are trying to solve this incredible problem we have, especially for women, of childcare in this nation. Over 3 million women left the workforce during the pandemic. They were more likely, according to studies, to have challenges with childcare and be faced with those problems alongside everything else during the pandemic. Natalia and Mariela recognized that problem for their own lives and wanted to make sure they made a difference. And so they're out there solving the childcare problems by opening their first center in Minnetonka. So Natalia and Mariela, please join me. Well, Jeni, I'm going to have you kick us off with your first question. I know that so many entrepreneurial stories are about resilience, are about ensuring that, you can persist in your vision and your unique identity. And you spent quite some time in that journey developing your vision of a product and a company. And, I think that you reinvented things that no one imagined you could reinvent, like basic chocolate ice cream. But I want you to tell us a little bit more about running your business day in and day out, and where does that tenacity and confidence come from? Because we all need to find that. Where does it come from, and how do you persistently summon it in the face of every challenge?
Oh my goodness, and thank you so much. This is so wonderful. I grew up believing that I was the luckiest person on earth. I was an American. not just in American, but in Peoria, Illinois, in the Midwest. For some reason, my grandparents were very clear about that to me, on both sides of my family. I believed very much that in America, anybody can be whatever they want, and that I could start small and build anything that I could imagine, anything that I could dream of. In fact, I remember this one time I was 10 years old, and I was running through my house to go meet up with my sister in the backyard. And my grandmother, I stayed a lot at my grandmother's house, lived with her for a long time when I was growing up, stopped me. She was by the stove in her kitchen, and she stopped me in this very dramatic moment, and she was like, "Jeni, look at me. Do you understand how lucky you are?" And I was like, "I mean, I think so." And she said, "You can be anything that you want to be. You can be a doctor, you can be a lawyer, you can be an astronaut, you can be the president." And I was like, "Okay, that's really nice. Thanks, Grandma." You know, I mean, I was trying to be polite, but I was like, God, it's the 80s. Like, I already know that. And so I ran off to meet my sister in the backyard. And I remember this, like just so clearly. When I stepped outside, I was like, in my mind, I was like, oh, well, if that's true, like, why would anybody want to be a lawyer? I'll be an ice cream maker. And I really was in my mind, in my calculus, I thought, I did this very fast math. I was like, it's not about what I want. It's about how do I want to feel. And so my vision in my life has always been about that. It's always been, what do I want to feel? I want to feel peace, love, safety, inspiration, a sense of community. I moved almost every year growing up, so that became very, very important to me. And it's always been that vision that keeps me going. And I'll just add really quick, so 10 years later, I started my first ice cream company from the time I was 10 years old, so 22. I'm going to be 50 this year, so this is a long time of my life. Between that 10 years, 12 years, my family fell apart in a really big way. And so in a way, when I watched very much watching my parents go through what they went through with some tragic events in my life, built the resilience and resourcefulness that I needed, I think, to become an entrepreneur. So when I see kids now, maybe a parent is in the prison system, maybe they can't sit still in class, all sorts of reasons that they fall through, that they're in the struggle. I see entrepreneurs. I see kids who are the perfect entrepreneurs because they already have resilience, resourcefulness, empathy. They know their community, and they're very sensitive to feedback and what's happening. So these are the kids that I want to reach, because this is exactly what fuels it every single day. For me still.
Amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, Cleo's been a trailblazer. I said she's in manufacturing. I don't know that you have to understand, this is now my face of aerospace manufacturing. and I want to see more Cleos replicated around the country because she did come in as a trailblazer, probably the first women founding an aerospace parts manufacturing company, definitely the first African-American woman. And what a remarkable time in the 80s, launching this firm. That took incredible tenacity to believe in yourself. And, I know that you were able to leverage the SBA, but walking through, I know you were in a corporate position first and decided to take that leap into entrepreneurship. And, how did you jump in and command that kind of validity that you needed to in that room full of, frankly, white men who were dominating the space? What was in it? What was in you internally or in your upbringing that really helped you do that?
I think it's something you're born with, that it's in you, it's a part of you, and you're going to, I think I was just that child that was determined to do what I wanted to do. I was a good kid, but I still was a stubborn child. And as an adult, that was what got me going this particular direction. And it's a business that I started with another lady, and she was a white female, and we were quite different. And I believe my color, no question about it, was a benefit in the fact that I was a woman going into these businesses, and it was all the major airlines, I survived through Brana, Pan Am, Eastern Airlines, TWA. Again, it's an industry I've been in almost 50 years. And I started out as a sales rep and territorial sales manager for someone, and ended up selling products all over the world. I actually trained over in Norway to build containers. I was selling the aircraft cargo equipment, containers, pallets, etc. I sold electrical items, and one day we just decided, my business partner, who has been, I think she's in years of a business that will be 40 years old on June 4th of this year. And once she passed, I ended up buying her family out of the business. And again, this is something I just decided I wanted to do. When I'd walk into a place, they would be curious about me. Who is this? What's she doing? One of the first questions I got when someone had called, one of the engineers, and it was Northwest Airlines, called and asked to speak with someone in sales and what have you. And I answered the phone, and he said, there was silence. You're a woman. And I said, yes. And he went on and asked me different technical questions and all. And that's when I told him what he needed to hear. And he said, are you an engineer? And I said, no. He said, you should have been. Well, when I made a trip to Northwest Airlines and I met with him, and he took me in to meet with his manager and then the director of engineering. And the director leaned back in his chair and looked at me and said, and what do you know about cargo equipment, etc.? And I didn't say a word because both of them said, she knows everything. And I became known at one point as the container lady within the airlines and all. But it was a thing of learning everything you could, keeping your reputation strong, good. I wore all the little starch shirts, nice navy suit, skirts, of course, no pants, and the silly little ties and the whole bit. And I used to call them my no-nonsense clothes. And I would just, as Nike says, just do it. And basically, that's what I did. So we would not have survived without the Small Business Administration. We were faced with bankers when they said you had to be turned down at least 5 times. I think we were turned down 105 times. When we started with net 30s, and we would sell the product, we'd bring the product in, sell it, and get paid, and then buy more. And that's how we operated for probably the first couple of years of business. And then after that, we got an SBA loan. And that is what got us really moving. And then after the first loan, we needed a second loan because it's a very high intense inventory type business. And on the second loan, the bank told us that we were denied. And so I said to the banker, I said, well, we'll just go down there ourselves. And he said, oh, you can't do that. And I said, I'm going down there and I'll, talk to them. I said, no one can sell us better than we can sell ourselves. And so we went down and talked to the SBA loan officer, and his suggestion was that you should get an investor. And I said, now, if you were in our position and we were making money, I said, would you get an investor? And he said, no. And I said, well, we're not getting an investor.
I love that story.
And he gave us a loan. And so from there, we moved on. But
Well, you can see, I mean, stubbornness is a quality that because knowing that you can do it and believing in yourself, I think is what it's so inspiring to me. Well, for our new entrepreneurs in the space, and I went to go work at Tierra Encantada, and I had the lovely conversation in Spanish with this adorable little boy who had just been there 6 months and was already able to have a conversation with me in Spanish. And so Tierra Encantada is a unique child care franchise system. So these are franchisors who imagine their possibilities in entrepreneurship and child care. And this is a tough business, a very tough business. Obviously, that's why our infrastructure is so lacking in this space. And so they were smart to pull together a proven model to replicate in their community. Mariela and Natalia, I know that you started a business when everyone, can't imagine what that felt like, to actually jump in during a pandemic when things are closed. Obviously it's an industry that was needed so much, but what made you cross over that line to decide that you were going to be an entrepreneur?
Well, so this has been an idea that both Mariela and I had for many years. And in 2017, we started kind of putting it more together and working towards it. And then it took that many years, like almost 3.5 years, to make it fluent, to have it be a dream. We had the franchise behind us, we had financing in place, we had SBA loan, and we had a landlord that believed and partnered with us, so we were not going to stop because of the pandemic. We decided that it wasn't even in our mind. We never thought about it. And then we also experienced, we have kids at home, so we were working remotely, we were childcare providers, we were distance learning teachers, so everything. And a lot of daycare centers had closed, some permanently, unfortunately, but others just temporarily. And we saw the need there. There was still the need for all those parents that were multitasking and trying to be their best person ever in all these different fields that they had. We had, we needed a safe place for the parents, we needed a safe place for the teachers, for the kids. So it never occurred to us to stop it. We just wanted to do it and take advantage of the situation and have in a way, yes, and have the kids be in a safe place to be.
Anything to add?
Yeah, so I think, we had this plan in place, and like Natalia said, even though it was COVID, it was a difficult time. We knew the demand was there for, many parents. Like Natalia said, my own daycare closed, so I have to be a working mom at home with my kid, and it was a very difficult experience. At the same time, we were going through construction. We are trying to close our SBA loan, and there is like 100 different, moving parts that we wanted to accomplish, and making sure that we could open this daycare and start providing, that care that was so much needed. There were many people also that was unemployed already. So, just being open for the community, employing people. We are currently employing 32 staff members, including kitchen, teachers, assistant teachers, and we serve over 134 families. Wow. So it has been, an incredible journey. And when I think back, I was like, and I can say this to anyone, if you're thinking about opening your business, if you're dreaming it, just do it. There is no perfect time. If you are just waiting for that perfect time, it will not get there. Because you have a pandemic, you have interest rates are too high, whatever it is. So if you are thinking, just do it. Something that I, think now is like, I should have started this way earlier. Not waited. So I think we are capable of overcoming so many barriers. Like, I'm sitting here and I cannot believe it, right? So it's like, okay.
Well, I think too, making that, I was recently on a panel with Mark Cuban, and he talked about what makes an entrepreneur. It's like whoever was willing to cross that line and actually make the decision to move forward. But I'm reminded that women not just have to evaluate crossing the line, but they cross the line with their whole family in tow. And so you're helping more women find that freedom and liberty to be able to start a business by taking care of the children. Well, I want to turn to Jeni and Cleo, because I think that replicating the success that you have built over the past decades is something that we want to do at the SBA. And you've been able to both leverage programs, specifically at the SBA. I actually use Jeni's ice cream as my model for why we have to fight so hard for small dollar lending in this country, because Jeni, and I know she'll share, but she started with a very small dollar SBA loan. And making sure that we have capital for those startups so that they could create their own vision versus relying on funding, equity investment is so key. So could you tell us, including about capital, but tell us about the capital challenges and how you address those in particular, and you can also just speak broadly about challenges and how you overcome them.
Well, I was also, my first SBA loan was in 2002, and I wanted $25,000 or $30,000, and I didn't have good credit because I had co-signed a lease for my mother, and she had been evicted. So there was that on my credit. So I couldn't, and so many young women have these same issues, I couldn't get the loan on my own. So I had to have my boyfriend at the time co-sign that loan for me. And we're talking 25, I could have easily made it work with $25,000. I think we ended up getting 30 altogether when it was said and done. But that made him part owner of the company. He became my husband, and he's a wonderful human being, but that's not always the case. So I often think that, at the time I knew, and I had done it, I could go to Ohio State University and get grants to go to school. And I think I had about $25,000 in grants to go to school. And I always think, why couldn't I just get that to start this first company? Why couldn't, and I've talked to some of the banks now, and I think, could there be a public-private sort of situation where we can give out these small grants? Because a lot of businesses, and I see so many of them, just start tiny and grow. And that is the message, if I have one every day that I'm out saying, is, anyone in America can start where they're at and build anything they can imagine. And it starts little. Actually, it's a better way to start a company anyway. I would never have learned all of the wonderful magic about milk proteins that I learned, and in doing so, be able to take out stabilizers and emulsifiers and corn syrup from ice cream if I hadn't been stretched out for 10 years, growing very, very slowly in the farmer's market, working directly with the dairies. I never would have discovered that if I had gotten a whole bunch of money in the beginning. We never would have built this incredible community that is the brand of Jeni's if it hadn't been for that time that we spent boots on the ground. So we had that little loan, but then for many, many years, as we started to grow, it got easier to get loans, and we were funded by the SBA. And I tell everybody now, all of the young people are looking for VC and looking for their first rounds of funding, and I'm like, go to the SBA, start small and build. And eventually we did go to we now have a private equity partner, but that wasn't until 2016. So I had built the brand at that point. So I retain a lot of power in the company because of that.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you. Well, it's, the SBA focuses on access to capital, but we also focus on market access for our women to make sure that they can grow their revenues through contracting or through international trade. And Cleo, you've leveraged both.
Yes.
First, working in the defense sector to expand your company, but talk a little bit about your opportunities that were opened up as a result of working with the SBA.
Well, the opportunities have been unreal. We started out with $7,500. That was it. And my business partner put her car up to get us going. And we ended up getting the SBA loan, our first SBA loan, probably 2.5 years after we had started. So again, it was our reputations and credibility, and the fact that we were doing the net 30s. And because we had relationships with so many of the people at the airlines and all, they would go in and tell their accounting people, pay these ladies, they're really trying to get this business going. But that was probably the real way we got going there.
Yeah, that quick payment. Well, I think,
quick
and leveraging the 8A program to get into government contracts is how Cleo was able to grow her business. And I think,
And it's international. We sell to, and what we do, we build the hydraulic and pneumatic hose assemblies that go on aircraft and defense equipment. And then we supply all the fasteners, nuts, bolts, screws, rivets, clamps, any type of hardware that you would find on an airplane or equipment, government equipment. That is what we supply and what we build. And our customers are the Boeings, the McDonnell Douglas. We supply the parts that have gone on Air Force One, Air Force Two. Some of our customers have been like Air Vodahody over in Czechoslovakia. Every year we do either the London Air Show or the Paris Air Show. We do business worldwide.
and tell us about how you leverage the STEP program to do some of those trade shows and win some multi-million-dollar contracts.
How I did what now?
The STEP grants, I know you guys use the STEP grants to
Okay.
get to trade shows.
Well, we used that, and that was wonderful because it gave us an opportunity to be able to go to those places and to other, even with the state of Kansas involved with us and going to the London Air Show, the Paris Air Show, to other just shows where we could market ourselves, so.
Well, let's end with the rapid round because I know that we're running out of time. So we have a rapid fire round. And for the next woman who decides to take that leap and start her business, what is your most valuable advice that you would relay?
My most valuable.
Cleo. No, go ahead.
No, you go. All right. My most valuable advice would be, again, like Nike, just do it. And that is what we did. We just did it. I always said you have to be a little crazy. And especially 40-some years ago and being, again, one white, one black. And something I always like to mention, one of the bankers said to us, my business partner said, she felt like we were being discriminated against. And he said, well, you can expect to be discriminated against. You're young women of childbearing age, and one of you is black. So this is what you should expect. And there are always going to be those obstacles, some type of obstacles, and you have to learn to go over, under, around, or through them.
There you
and
go.
That's it.
That's great. That's great. Okay, rapid round, Jeni.
I would just say trust your instinct. Now that I'm so far into my business, 26 years, I can look back over a long period of time and say that my instinct was almost always right. And when I got in trouble was when I stopped trusting it.
That's beautiful. That's great. Mariela, Natalia?
And I think I mentioned this, and it's just exactly that. Just follow your gut instinct. It will lead you to that. It could be, you will be afraid, but just do it. Just go for it. Otherwise, you will regret it. So
That's amazing.
And I think something that resonated with me yesterday was purpose, passion, and perseverance. So the first two, when you start, purpose and passion, you have it. Just the perseverance and try to overcome those words in your mind constantly that say, okay, stop here, or you just keep going. Think like what they have said, just do it and move forward. Because that's something that has happened to me, and I have worked endless times on myself trying to say, okay, this is worth it, and we're doing a great job. It's just my mind that's thinking something else. So just keep pushing you.
That's amazing. Well, everyone, that's what our takeaway here is. Just do it.
Yes.
Jump in. Let's do it. All right. Thank you all. Thank you all so much. Beautiful.
Would Could you all just keep your seat for a minute while the administrator exits? She's due across town almost now. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Do we sit?
What a wonderful panel. Let's just give them one more round of applause. Let's give our administrator one more round of applause. Are you having a good Women's Business Summit? Is the second annual summit delivering on your expectations? We've heard from the president. We've heard from Senator Cardin, we've heard from the administrator, and we have met some of the most dynamic, inspiring women. I feel I don't know what I'm going to start tomorrow. Anyone want to partner up? Yes. I have some ideas. We can get it going. Ladies, thank you so much. Before we close, I just want to let you know that we have someone just fantastic in the room. And she came in and took a little seat and didn't say anything to anyone. We have the wonderful president, Melanie Campbell, who is the president of the National Coalition on Black Civil Participation and the Black Women's Roundtable, right over here in the corner. You have no idea what a champion this woman is for women. She has the air of the president. She has the air of members of Congress. She takes this place by storm, and she works for all of us, all of us. What she gets for Black women, she gets for all women. And so we just want to acknowledge you and thank you for being here. With that, our morning in the Dirksen office building is concluded. Hug someone. Wait, you have my brooch on. I was looking for it this morning. It's gorgeous. I knew something was missing, but I hope you've had a good time. Make a new friend, hug someone, tell them they're fabulous, and we're getting ready to launch into the virtual part of our program, so join us there. Bye now.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
You're fabulous. You're fabulous. The administrator talks about you guys literally wherever get up there.
Well, I am so happy to do that.
And your suit.
I'm like, we're all the color.
Come on. I love it. Let people just hug you and get to you.
Good morning and welcome to SBA's second annual Women's Business Summit. My name is Delia Gonzalez. I'm a reporter and anchor for WUSA 9 here in Washington, D.C. It is my absolute privilege and pleasure to serve as your MC for this year's summit. And if you are one of the 12 million plus women entrepreneurs and business owners in the U.S., you know this is the place to be. The SBA has an amazing program in store for each of you today, continuing into tomorrow. From policy panels to Ask the Expert and special on-demand sessions. So we are thrilled you have decided to spend your valuable time with us to connect to important insights from women's business enterprise thought leaders and SBA officials, program experts who will share important information about free entrepreneurial development resources and both business financing and government contracting opportunities. But before we dive into these great panels, it is my honor to turn it over to a leader who truly needs no introduction. The voice of America's small businesses, the 47th SBA Administrator, Isabella Casillas Guzman, here to kick off this year's program.
Hi, I'm Isabella Guzman, 27th Administrator of the U.S. Small Business Administration and the voice on President Biden's cabinet for America's 33 million small businesses and innovative startups, including the 12 million women entrepreneurs. I am delighted to welcome you to the SBA's second annual Women's Business Summit. We kicked things off with a very special event at the White House featuring inspirational remarks from President Biden and a lively discussion with some of America's leading entrepreneurs who shared their stories, insights, and useful tips for anyone launching or growing their business. Today, we have an incredible day planned, starting at the Dirksen Senate Office building on the grounds of the U.S. Capitol. Join me for a conversation with some of the most inspirational women entrepreneurs I've met in my travels across the nation. Women who persevered and remind us of our endless possibilities. Hear from leading voices for women's entrepreneurship. From the SBA's National Women's Business Council Executive Director, Tené Dolphin, our tireless advocate, House Small Business Committee Ranking Member, Nydia Velasquez, and many more. The incredible team at SBA's Office of Women's Business Ownership and the SBA's National Women's Business Council have designed for you a series of high-impact panels, Q&A sessions, and more from some of the nation's top small business advocates. These sessions will be filled with valuable leads, business tips, links to small business networks and other resources, and much more to help you achieve your American dream of business ownership. Today is action-packed, so get your notepad ready and let's start realizing all of our possibilities together.
Good afternoon. I'm Donald Malcolm Smith, the Acting Assistant Administrator for the Office of Women's Business Ownership, where for 35 years we have supported and strengthened women entrepreneurs. Thank you so much for joining us for the second annual Women's Business Summit and hope that you're able to access information that can help you start, grow, and sustain your business venture. I'm pleased to be joined by a fabulous set of partners, but most of all, I'd like to acknowledge the National Women's Business Council. And with that, I turn it over to Tené Dolphin, the Executive Director of the National Women's Business Council.
Hello, my name is Tené Dolphin, and I serve as the Executive Director of the National Women's Business Council. It has been such a pleasure to collaborate with my colleague, Donald Smith, planning this incredible summit. Donald, thank you for all you do to support women's business centers across the country and the clients they serve, who also happen to be the backbone of so many American families, local communities, and our national economy. At the National Women's Business Council, we are committed and dedicated to supporting women business owners from all communities and all walks of life. This commitment requires dialogue, analysis of existing and new research, engagement through our public meetings and roundtables, and an independent examination of policy proposals and legislation. At these activities are the heart of what this 15-member, all-volunteer, woman-led council do day in and day out. And certainly our current council members and staff stand on the shoulders of the trailblazing women who helped lift up the voice of women business owners across the country 35 years ago, when legislators and advocates championed the passage of HR 5050, the Women's Business Ownership Act. What a privilege it is to continue this legacy of service to women. 35 years later, our current council members remain dedicated to helping connect the voices of more than 13 million women-owned businesses to key policymakers and government officials. The council has successfully recommended policy and programmatic changes that have ultimately benefited women businesses. But until women business owners achieve equity, we still have work to do. So today, we will share some of our learnings while we continue to gather new data to inform future solutions. We will celebrate successes and highlight how women are the drivers of change, creating their own tables and providing answers at every turn. So thank you to our past and current council members, and a special thank you to SBA Administrator Guzman for her steadfast dedication to women business owners and for making this summit possible. And most of all, I want to thank you for joining us and taking part in this critical dialogue. These 2 days were designed with you in mind. And now I'd like to share the stage with a few more dynamic women working tirelessly toward equity. Our partners for this year's summit, Nicola Corzine of the Nasdaq Entrepreneurial Center, Corinne Goble of the Association of Women's Business Centers, and Jeni Flores of Wells Fargo. Please enjoy the summit.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second annual Women's Business Summit. My name is Nicola Corzine, and I'm the founding executive director of the Nasdaq Entrepreneurial Center. We are a nonprofit committed to access and equity in the field of entrepreneurship by delivering free resources, programming, and mentorship for all. And today, the all that we're celebrating is our incredible women business owners across this great nation. What an amazing moment this is in time. 35 years in the making as we celebrate all that you've given to our country. And despite the challenges, despite all the reasons you could lean out and say, not for me, you have lent in and said, I believe in a better future for us, for our families, for our communities, and for this world. We are so grateful that you did. We are so thankful for all that you have made possible for all of us. And we are so excited for the brighter future that you're building. As we stand here beside so many amazing partners today, know that each and every one of us hold near and dear all the work that you had given, all the opportunity that you've provided, and all the incredible companies that you've built. We know we're just getting started, and we're excited for all that's to come. These next 2 days of programming are here in support of you. And on that note, the center would be honored and inspired if you become a part of our community, which you can do by visiting us online and signing up for our newsletter, joining our classes, finding a mentor, seeking support, and paying it forward like you always do. It is an incredible honor to be here, and we look forward to seeing and celebrating you very soon.
Hello, I'm Jeni Flores, Head of Small Business Growth Philanthropy at Wells Fargo. It is a true honor to be with you today. I want to give a special thanks to SBA Administrator Guzman for her vision and incredible leadership. Also, her team, Donald Smith, Acting Assistant Administrator of the Office of Women's Business Ownership, and Tené Dolphin, Executive Director of the National Women's Business Council. Also, my deep appreciation to the teams at the Nasdaq Entrepreneurial Center and the Association of Women's Business Centers for helping to coordinate today's events. Over the past 35 years, women's entrepreneurs have made so much progress, yet there is still so much more to be done. The small business ecosystem is just scratching the surface on offering support to women entrepreneurs so they can reach their full potential. I think the challenges are clear, and they're felt every single day by women entrepreneurs in terms of accessing capital, access to expertise, and access to networks. Let's just explore these one by one. On access to capital, while there are numerous women starting small businesses, they continue to face barriers in accessing capital to scale their business. It's more difficult now for women-funded companies, particularly those led by women of color, to get traditional bank loans and venture capital. At Wells Fargo, we made a concerted effort to move capital to women and help close a capital gap through our Open for Business Fund, which allocated approximately $420 million for both capital and technical assistance. I am proud to report that out of the 178,000 small businesses that we've helped so far, 54% were female-owned and 79% were racially and ethnically diverse. On access to expertise, women report challenges in finding communities in which they can belong and thrive. We need to be able to tap into networks with empowered female leaders to learn from and engage with professionally. This need is at an all-time high. One program that I'm really proud to support and meets this demand is the Nasdaq Milestone Circles, which has offered more than 1,200 women with coaching, mentorship, and networking that help them hit critical milestones to take their business to the next level. On access to networks, networks matter now more than ever as investors that are really risk averse are going back to familiar patterns of funding people they know. An impact of this practice is that in 2022, only 1.9% of all of venture capital in the United States went to female-founded startups. This is already down from 2.4% in 2021. It's both urgent and critical that we support networks that are helping women business owners to thrive. That is why in 2021, Wells Fargo invested $1.5 million to help How Women Invest mobilize 10,000 women to put $1 billion of their own capital behind women-founded companies. We are living in a time of both great opportunity and also great urgency to defend and expand the gains that we've made for economic empowerment. By focusing on the power of increasing access to capital, expertise, and networks, we can transform the outcomes for women-owned businesses across this country. As the iconic entrepreneur Beyonce Knowles will tell us, ladies, let's get information and build the access women need and deserve. Thank you all for your participation today. I hope you enjoy the rest of the summit.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here with you. We are so excited to be here for SBA's second annual Women's Summit. It's the second summit, but we're 35 years into the Women's Business Center program, providing support for small businesses who want to get started and grow. And at the association, we're 25 years today, or this year is our anniversary. Women's Business Centers have been we're behind this association. They started us 25 years ago so that they would have a voice in improving the program and making sure that their clients, our businesses, are getting the support that will help them get started and grow. And so with the association, what we're doing, we're supporting women's business centers. So if you're here with a women's business center, shout out to you. If you're a client of a women's business center, congratulations for finding the support you need. And if you know someone in business or you yourself are in business, the best thing you can do is help spread this word. Most people don't know about women's business centers. And it's such a shame because they're providing so much great help into the communities. We now have 145 women's business centers, in part funded by the Small Business Administration, located in every single state across the country, as well as the District of Columbia and Puerto Rico. We're offering services in 25 languages. So depending on the community where you are, if you can find a women's business center in your city, chances are you can also find one that can provide services and support in your language. The beautiful thing about women's business centers is they were designed to provide solutions. They came about at a time 35 years ago when our nation realized that access to capital and access to funding was still the thing holding businesses back from their success, especially women in business. And so they were founded, designed to solve that problem. Today, 40% of our women's business centers are located within a lending institution. And what that means is they're really well equipped to help your business get ready to access additional funding or to find that startup capital. And in some cases, also to find grant funding. So many businesses come to a women's business center and the first thing they're asking or they're demanding is, I need a grant, I need to get started, or I need to find some way to grow my business. And the truth is grants can be really hard to come by. If there are grants available in your community, in your state, a women's business center is probably going to know about them. But the chances are you're probably going to have to find funding another way. And so women's business centers are here to prevent you and to help you get out of the pattern of funding your business out of your own finances, out of using a credit card to pay payroll. Women's business centers are solutions. They're solutions to your business dilemmas and helping you plan for a robust, a successful, a bright future. So we hope that you're excited about your business. We're excited about supporting you, and we hope you can find a women's business center here with us at awbc.org or at hopetowomen.org. So I hope you have a wonderful conference experience today. We're here for you when you're ready. Thank you so much.
What an incredible way to start this event. I hope you're all energized and ready to dive into these issues. Now, don't go away, because following a brief intermission, we're going to hear from a fantastic group of women leaders who will share with you some important strategies about how to work smarter, not necessarily harder, to get the financing you need to start, scale, and grow your business. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you got your stretch in and that second cup of brew, your notepads and pencils too. This next panel will lift up strategies, model programs, and organizations leading the charge in getting more women founders, including women of color, in both Main Street and Silicon Valley capitalized. Please welcome our moderator, Nicola Corzine, Executive Director of the Nasdaq Entrepreneurship Center, here to open our panel entitled, She Works Smart for the Money, Best Fit Approach to Accessing Capital.
Hello and welcome. My name is Nicola Corzine, and I have the honor of being the founding executive director of the Nasdaq Entrepreneurial Center. We are a nonprofit committed to access and equity in the field of entrepreneurship by delivering free resources, mentorship, and classes for each and every founder, wherever they are in the world. It is an honor to have you all here joining us today for a very important conversation that we've intentionally titled, She Works Smart for the Money, a best fit approach to accessing capital. We believe that capital is a function that is in service and acceleration to incredible entrepreneurs like each and every one of you. And I have an amazing honor of introducing you to 4 awesome women business owners today who are going to share a little bit about their journey, the choices that they've made around this really challenging topic. So here's what we're going to cover today. First, ideas on how you can work smart for capital, prioritizing based on your time and your value from maximum alignment to the success as you define it. Number 2, we aim to demystify and speak with transparency around the types of capital that you should be exploring to help you identify questions that you want to ask in your own pursuit of capital exploration. And finally, we know you're going to walk away being inspired by our women business owners joining us today, especially as you think of your own vision for success and the capital path that is most supportive to that. The center conducted a study with Penn State University on pay, ownership, and valuation for women business owners, which we lovingly call POV, because we, as women, should have a point of view on these critical issues. And we found, not surprisingly, that access to capital is the #1 pain point for women entrepreneurs. While women are half of our population, we are certainly not receiving half of the total capital available. All of this obviously is compounded right now by the current market volatility and the inequities in the field. But for this next precious hour together, I'm going to ask that we all set an intention, that we drown out those negative headlines, and that we focus on what matters most, you. You as the founder and the leader in relation to your own capital journey. And as with the best of intentions, before we can go there, we first need to take a moment to check in with ourselves and see how we're doing. So I'm going to launch a poll right now that you'll see go live in the chat on how you are feeling right now in this moment. We're going to be launching a few of these polls today, and we'd ask that you take the time to share with yourselves and share with your peers who are all here on this same journey as us. And you'll be able to see those results as you refresh the page. So now let's get started. I mentioned it earlier, but we have 4 amazing women business owners who are going to be sharing their journey with us. And I'm going to ask each of them a prompting question to get us started today, along with a little bit of their background as they do so. So Maria, I'm going to get started with you. Welcome. We're so thrilled that you're joining us. I'd love you to share just a brief introduction to your amazing story as a founder and why out of everything that you could be doing in this world with your time and your talents, you chose Progeny Coffee.
Thank you so much, and I'm thrilled to be here with all of you in this panel with this incredible woman, some that I already know. Why did I choose? So Progeny Coffee goes very dear to my heart. I'm actually from Colombia, and all my family are coffee growers in Colombia. And I remember growing up in Colombia and seeing all the struggles that my family went through, and being on this side, just seeing all of that, you know, it raised this question of like, can it be different? Can we do something that we could change and impact lives? And out of that heart of seeking for something different is that, you know, we enter into this journey of Progeny Coffee.
I love that. Your values are clear as a leader and why you built this business. We're so grateful that you're here today. Thank you. Tarika, welcome. Amazing to have you too, my friend. Could you share a little bit about your background story? And also, again, why out of everything in the world, precision construction and engineering?
So thank you. I echo Maria, and just an honor to be a part of the panel. And I had so many people help me along the way. It's great to be able to share those nuggets and pass them on. So why perceptive engineering? So I started as an entrepreneur to really, I was an engineer in manufacturing, working the crazy hours of someone that was in management, and there was very little to no balance to my life. And I just got to a pinnacle where something as simple as my children asking, "Can you pick us up from school?" And you realize, like, wow, where are my priorities lying right now? And then just seeing opportunities. And I had an entrepreneur peer I met through a professional organization, and she'd asked me, she was like, "Have you ever thought about being an entrepreneur?" And I was like, "No." I said, "No, ma'am. I get a good check every week, and I know exactly when it's coming, and I know exactly how much it's going to be. No interest in it at all." And I saw the volatility of what I thought was a for sure market. As the organization that I was with, there was acquisitions and mergers that, no warning, seeing whole entire departments of people being laid off. And I realized that what I'm pouring into, there is a chance that I may not reap from what I'm really pouring into and sacrificing. So I really essentially branched out to save and add balance to my family, using what I knew as an engineer, and just launched straight into entrepreneurship. And I realized that I did not realize the level of freedom that it would have for my son and my daughter to transition from seeing me go through all the journeys of an entrepreneur, and how it's inspired them and other kids in their friend group, that it's something that can be realized. Because I didn't have a good example of an entrepreneur in the space that I was in, but I realized that I could use all of the things that I learned as an engineer and apply that in a way where I had full control over what that journey looked like. So I'm excited to be a part of it and to have done it. I wouldn't advise anybody to do it the way that I did it, but it's going really great right now, and I'm excited about what's ahead.
Oh, so are we, Tarika. And I think your origin story is such a meaningful one and so beautifully articulated. Thank you for sharing that with us today. It's going to set the stage for important conversations for many who feel the same way. Yulia, welcome, first and foremost. Awesome to have you here. Tell us a little bit about your story, how you got started, and why this?
Well, first, thank you so much. It's a pleasure and honor to be here, and exciting to be able to share this story. So I think I would just start with the fact that I'm actually an immigrant to the United States, very blessed and grateful for everything that, all the opportunities that the United States was able to give me. I'm originally from Belarus, and I think this is very much defines my journey and why and how I started C-Note. When I came to the United States, I actually had my own journey as an immigrant, not knowing where to go, not knowing where to start, living in the places where might not be considered the most, safe, and actually experiencing myself the whole concept of redlining, even though it's typically something that, you would study in the history books or in the school here in the United States. Me coming from Belarus, I had no idea that something like this exists. Obviously, not being exposed to that in Belarus, and so that experience really framed my experience. Then when I actually started working on Wall Street and getting my experience as a financial professional. And so I just got to the point where, I love finance. I know finance. I understand the power of finance. And yet I also realized that whatever I was doing in finance, I was doing it with very much disconnected from, I guess, the soul and who I am as a person and what I would love to do with my talents and skills. And so I actually, after being about 10 years on Wall Street, I switched into impact investing space and I started my journey there. And as I was starting my journey and I was like still finding my path there, I decided that I was going to take a risk and actually started C-Note as a way to challenge the status quo and challenge the way the system was really built and designed, and to see if as the business, as this new idea, this financial innovation, we can actually fill some of the gaps that exist in the system. And so the mission behind C-Note was, closing the wealth gap through financial innovation and really leveraging skills and talents that I have and my co-founder have to change something that we do really agree with. And so that's how we got here. That's where we are right now. And that's what really, was there, the trigger for us to start it. And I would say this is definitely what keeps us going in spite of all this ups and downs of an entrepreneurial journey.
We are so glad that you are out there disrupting that status quo. We need you now more than ever. I think we all feel that for sure. Lots more to come there, without doubt. Caroline, welcome, and thank you so much for the work that you're doing at Hello Alice. For those of you who may not know, Caroline, why don't you tell us a little bit about Hello Alice and how you got started on this amazing journey?
Thank you very much. I'm super excited to be here. You might know our story at Hello Alice really started from my own experience as a small business owner. My grandparents had a cookie and bread factory in Bolivia, neighbors to Maria in Colombia, and my dad ran a small business, the insurance business in the States. And seeing those two experiences growing up, frankly, I always saw the really difficult parts of entrepreneurship and wanted to go the corporate path. Similar, Ilya, to you, I worked as an investment banker in New York for a bit. And then later in Houston, and then kept sort of getting called back to entrepreneurship and decided to have a go at it and started a very traditional small business. My first company was in the retail space. I ended up closing that business after 2 years, spent all those great investment banking bonuses. I learned a lot of hard lessons and realized how difficult it was to start a company from scratch. And it was those lessons, I think later, I started a second company later in the digital media space that I ultimately sold. And it made me realize that the same entrepreneur with different resources, with different backing, with a different knowledge base can have very, very different experiences. And recognizing how difficult it was to have to shut down a company, to go from having a steady paycheck, Tarika, like you mentioned, to actually being in debt and having a bunch of credit card debt and not knowing how you were going to pay your rent for the next month or buy groceries or do any of those things, was such an eye-opening experience that I wanted to prevent as many people from ever going through that as I possibly could. And that really formed kind of my life's mission and the mission of Hello Alice, to ensure that every entrepreneur has access to the capital, the knowledge, and networks that they need to grow their companies. At Hello Alice, we really focus on the fundamentals to optimize your company for success. That there's certain frameworks that if you follow, there's certainly lots of ways to grow your business. It's very different depending on the industry, depending on the location, depending on the type of entrepreneur that you are in terms of how you're going to grow that company. But there are fundamentals, making sure that you understand the finances of your business, making sure that you know how to lead a team, making sure that you know how to access capital. There's certain pieces that you just have to know to be able to run a business successfully that many of us learn the hard way. And that's where we focus our time and energy, is using community learnings, using the base of a community now of over 1.2 million small business owners, taking the knowledge and lessons that they've had, aggregating those and making those pathways easier for the next entrepreneurs to come along.
A mission that we all love and celebrate. Every single one of you in one way or shape or form has sort of shared that already. So I know we're going to have a lot to bond us in conversation today. So just to level set, and I think kind of ground us in the conversation that's to come, I'd love to invite each of you to sort of share your capital journey as it relates to the business. How did you make the selections to raise, to not raise, the type to raise, what part of the business journey were you in when you decided that? Just a very quick grounding, because again, I think as the answers unfold throughout our time together, that's going to be really helpful to know. So Maria, maybe we can start with you, and then we'll go round robin for each of you who want to share.
Yes, sure. So ours was very particular. As I mentioned, Progeny Coffee was born with a mission to the farmers out of poverty. And so it started with a heart for mission. And so when we went out there to seek money, we were really particular in the moment we wanted to go out there and raise money, and also who we received money from. We definitely we bootstrapped our company for the longest that we could. We're really intentional in the sense of like how much money we wanted, how much part of our company we wanted to give up, and then who were going to be those partners that we wanted to partner with to continue this mission. We stand for, poverty shouldn't come at the expense of profitability, and we are creating a company that is scalable, but we didn't want to lose our mission.
And we have that quick tactical moment of drop, but I know Maria will join us back. While she does, Tarika, can I invite you to share with us a little bit about your journey and your background in raising capital or thinking about the pursuits of raising capital?
Sure. And similar to Maria, bootstrapping was just a way to do things, but it was the other entrepreneurs that I knew and were kind of mentoring me. That was what they were doing. But I realized very quickly that I was limited at the level that I could scale the business with just bootstrapping. We were in the cycle of just bidding jobs, that consulting and bidding work that, we had the cash flow to really maintain. And in our industry, you could easily kind of incorporate in contracts a paid when paid mantra that worked very well, but it still was very limiting. And also, as people don't pay on time. And so that's another thing.
Really?
You don't like to. And that impacts scale. So ironically, I'd worked with on the board and with a couple of other organizations that were raising capital. And I just immersed myself in all of what it looked like, because I was afraid to. I really was afraid to raise capital because bootstrapping felt like a form of control. I knew where the money was coming from. While it was challenging, we were generating a decent amount of revenue, but you can feel yourself business-wise plateau. So a safe space or comfort for me and just accessing capital was just working with banks. So just thinking about, do we want to go the route of just loans, just to get the feel of using money that we didn't generate? The other piece was some of the organizations I'd worked with that had similar pathways or similar, we aligned with services, interlinking and collaborating with them. So providing joint services together. So as they were raising capital, we could join in and kind of, one I worked with, we created a similar joint venture. They were in the construction space for training while we were actually providing the service. So we could couple that to make an offer more appetizing for even folks that were looking at raising capital, even acquisition for a section of their organization. So it's scary, just seeing what works. So I'm actually right within this past year, we've been actively seeking and been sought after for acquisition. And while it's exhilarating, it's a scary call to get when someone's like, hey, we'd like to acquire you. And it's like, you feel like someone's just like, what do you mean? Like you just stole my keys and are trying to take my car away from me or something or it's my baby. So essentially it's a very scary space to be in, but I realized very quickly that if you want to grow and scale, you have to do it at some point. Like bootstrapping is not a sustainable method for growth. And I came to terms with that, sadly to say, or really to say, like within the past year or so, that if you want to scale, you're going to have to actively seek capital and not just kind of dance around and toy around and date with the idea, but actually commit to pursuing. So we've explored a couple of different methods at this particular point. There are a lot of, with some of the relationships that were created between organizations that we collaborated with, they're willing to invest. So I do have a circle of colleagues that say, hey, when you get ready, we're ready to invest. But even like, wow, that sounds appetizing. It's just determining at what threshold do I want you to invest? And what do we need and where do we want to go? So those are some big questions that we're answering right now in the midst of our business to say, hey, we want to scale into that next level and we have to do it. It's just needing and supping from those that have already in that space. Like, how do we get there? It's scary, but we're venturing that direction.
1,000%. I mean, I just want to take a moment to celebrate the fact that you're always asking these questions. I think being able to anchor it back to, do I want this? Do I want to scale? What is the right kind of capital that can enable that? Those are the questions that are so critical in the decision making that goes on. And the fearfulness, it's real. I think every single person here can 1,000% nod affirmatively on the challenges and the worries and the uncertainties and the doubts. But just grateful for you being very transparent and sharing that today, because I think it's something that often gets overlooked or sort of downplayed of like, we're not allowed to have that worry and that fear and that unsure environment. And yet that is what we live with 24/7 as founders, without doubt. So thank you. Maria, welcome back. Thank you for sharing the start of your journey. Do you want to just kind of continue through on the decisions that were made around the capital side?
Yes, sure. So as I was mentioning, we were really intentional on the moment we wanted to raise money. So definitely we bootstrapped for many years. And we knew how much we were willing to give up from our company. And so we wanted to make sure we grew it and expanded as far as we could, because we really believe on our mission. At the beginning, we did seek out some loans, and it was a interesting journey when we first, I remember we went from selling coffee at parks to an incredible group of moms in Silicon Valley to then acquiring a really large contract. And it was a corporate contract. And I remember that was the first time we felt that tension between growing and needing capital. And we're like, okay, we have this incredible contract. Now we need to scale. I need money. Where do you look? And I did the tradition of like just going and knocking to, I'm just going to go to my bank and get a loan. I have a contract. Like, why wouldn't they give me a loan? And then I saw like, wow, like everybody starts saying no. And it was those moments where like I have my breakthrough. Do I keep knocking doors or do I just let it go? Eventually, it took every single institution that I went and knocked until someone took me to these CFI co-working solutions that they gave me that first check that helped me scale. And then I understood that there's a whole ecosystem underneath that is here rooting for us to be able to scale. Eventually, it comes to the point that we tapped and we could not take our mission farther. And that's where we knew it was time for us to look for investors. Like my co-founder always said, like as many no's we receive, we said no as well, because we understood that when you seek investment, you're marrying this person. They are going to have a say. You're giving part. I didn't understand at the beginning that I was selling part of my company. I was bringing people in this journey. And so who was going to be those new partners that were going to accelerate our mission rather than that remove what was unique about our business. And so it took a long journey, but that was kind of like the criteria in which later on we brought in and we decided when to bring investment capital.
I love that. And sharing that mindset and that perspective of the journey that you go on when you take in different investors is so important for a founder to be comfortable with and to have thought through and to really be intentional in that. So thank you for sharing. And it's a perfect segue to Elia at Working Solutions. We mentioned the ecosystem that's required to make the dreams of founders possible. Tell us about the dream though of raising capital from your journey and how that all came together and is probably still unfolding to a certain degree.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's a few things to mention here. I actually very much love how every single conversation is actually really centers around, each of us, we really need to be honest to each other where we want to take the business and then really look for the capital that will get us there, right? Just because, and that's evaluation. I feel like it happens, on every step along the way. And I think that's what's really important for each woman or each entrepreneur out there to really understand, because it's a very different, think about, I just want to run a lifestyle business, right? And that's how it should be funded, versus I want to, create a few jobs for my community, and I really want to support my community. And that's another type of capital they're going to be seeking. And then in our case, like when we started C-Note, for us, it was very much, we want to change the system. We want to change the system, and we need to have investors that are aligned with our mission and who have the same values as us, the presence and the understanding of the industry, and this understanding what's possible, and the presence in the industry, the power in the industry, that we can build that new system together. And so when we started very similar way, we did bootstrapping, to as much as we could, and then we were building a lot of technology, and we required more growth-oriented capital, and we started, I think, like in a very probably similar journey as other kind of like growth oriented companies, where we've started with angel investing. Like we've gone through like VC rounds. I think the interesting thing for us about angel investing was we attracted a lot of women investors, and that was incredible for us, and it was very intentional for us. We believe that we want not just change the system, build the new system, but we also want to bring women along the way with us. And we also know that there's not just, a lot of things for us to solve for among women entrepreneurs, but also there's a lot of work that we need to do highlighting and elevating women LPs, right? And actually giving them an opportunity to contribute as a women, as women LPs. And so that was very powerful for us. So if you look at our cap table, we have a lot of women. It makes us very happy. And so when I think about the success of, C-Note, it's not just about, the mission, the vision, what we're building, but also as I think about, successful exit is like, I know that I'm not just doing it for my team and for the world, but I'm also doing for all these women LPs that are on our cap table. And that just like, it just gives you like another boost of like, we need to get it right? We need to do that. And I would say in terms of, again, the capital, it was not an easy journey, and it was definitely a journey where we definitely lived the experience of women are not getting enough visibility, and women are not getting enough presence, and women not getting enough attention. And we started our fundraising journey 6 years ago, right, when we were ready for this type of capital. And at that time, it was just not, I think, as popular maybe, right, as just kind of like as it is maybe right now, where like, I just want to have a quota, right? Like I think like right now, a lot of funds go for this like quotas. At that time, there was not even like quotas, right, for a lot of funds. And so that was also one of the things that, again, like we had to get through. And then just broadly speaking about like, again, just the whole, and we can talk about it if it's interesting, but like the whole idea is like, how do you find them? Where do you go? And like, do you play the game? You don't play the game. Like, how do you position yourself? Like, it's just like all these things that suddenly, I feel like it's also very much becomes not just like a financial decision, but it's also like an ethical decision, right? Just because, again, like we are being faced with, all these years of like different type of investing in different type of presentations and different type of businesses that have been pitched to investors, right? And so again, every time you're in that room, having the conversation with an investor, I feel like there's constant dance that is happening in a way. And so there's just like a lot to learn, a lot to share, and hopefully also, do it in a way that makes the future journey of capital raising for other women easier.
Love that. Thank you. Thank you for being on that journey, and thank you for sharing with us and with so many along the C-Note journey too. As I turn over to Caroline to answer the question, I mentioned that we were going to be launching a few polls. I've got another one that's going to be hitting that chat box in just a second, because we want to hear from you. We want to know what types of capital you're exploring raising right now, as all of us continue to think about what more resources, research, support we can be giving to you. Take a moment to share with us what's working for you and where you're trying to set your sights. And now, Caroline, over to you. Obviously, Hello Alice, again, exceptional growth, exceptional journey. How did capital and the exploration of this very, very difficult subject show up for you in that journey and in this progression so far?
What didn't show up that easily, I'll start there. It took us a lot of trial and error, particularly in the earlier days. Elizabeth, my co-founder, and I went out really starting, with this idea that we had this idea we wanted to go impact millions of entrepreneurs all around the world. We had this great big idea, and we knew we needed capital to go do it. We had never raised capital before, neither of us, so we were totally new to the game. As Yulia, as you mentioned, it was at a time, this was back in 2015, 2016, when there just weren't that many female-focused funds. So we laugh. We have a photo now. We went to Sand Hill Road. We started knocking on doors, and we got any appointment that we could possibly get. We have a picture of us in Sequoia's offices, and I laugh at the pitch that we gave because it was our first venture capital pitch we had ever done. I'm sure they probably rolled their eyes at us and thought we were completely ridiculous. But we learned from that experience. And I think a lot of it was just starting to demystify this idea of what it meant to go raise venture capital. And, we got a little bit of advice from everybody that we talked to. A lot of people, it wasn't necessarily advice they gave us. They just told us we had a horrible idea and it would never work. And here are all the reasons why. And it caused us to really dig our heels in and say, we're going to show them, we're going to do this in the way that we know how to do it. We're going to make this happen, and we're going to go find this money. And we leaned on our network. We found it wasn't Sand Hill Road. They didn't care about us. They weren't going to invest in our company. And instead, we picked up the phone and we started calling every well-connected female that we could possibly find. And we made hundreds of phone calls, and some of those amazing women bet on us. Jackie Zahner, who started Women Moving Millions and was the first female partner at Goldman Sachs. Kathy Reed, who started the Icon Group in Australia and is incredible, had a $1 billion plus exit from that company. Jean Case from the Case Foundation and the National Geographic Board. These amazing women that stepped up and supported us. Melinda Gates put some funding into our company. And so it really was the women in the early days that showed up for us. And I'm so grateful that we had people like that. There were certainly a few men who came into that group as well. Zofat from Signia Ventures actually led our seed round. But it was a learning process. We sat with our lawyers. I remember sitting in their offices and being like, what is a term sheet? I don't even know what this is. Help us, walk us through this. And at $800 an hour, we try to make that meeting as efficient as possible so we could learn really quickly. And then we also made a ton of money through partnerships. Dell was a great funder for us in the early days, and they gave us, it was a commercial agreement / partnership that we worked together on, but it was really our kind of first bit of capital to put into our company. And in that process, we learned and we relied on those people that did open the doors, that did make a huge bet. I look back, I'm like, I don't even know what they were investing in because we didn't quite know what we were. But we knew, like you said, we were going to show up for these people who took a bet on us. And to this day, we're still so committed that we are going to make a lot of money for these people to prove that, look, these women made a bet on us and look what we did for them and look how it turned out. And the reality is the men have since trickled in. We have amazing investors. We have QED Capital, which is one of the leading fintech firms. Silicon Valley Bank actually led our Series A. So it's been a rough week, but John Sheena, who sits on our board, they really were just incredible backers and supporters for us as a company. And so it's been interesting. I think we've kind of moved from these impact investors that took sort of a mission bet on us and moved into, once we gained more confidence and started to understand what it was like, how did we deliver, how did we need to present ourselves in these meetings, really moved into a more traditional VC space. So I think that education and the connections and networks are critical. And I would say just go pitch and pitch and pitch and pitch and learn and practice. And it's okay if you fail. We failed the first 400 plus times. We had so many meetings for our seed round, but I'm so grateful for that experience.
That's so awesome. I mean, I think the thematics around the alignment and the importance of like looking across the entire ecology of capital to each and every one of you has shown up strongly. One of the misalignments or the areas that can sometimes be challenging is around our own financial health as we think about the health of the finances of the company. And again, it's one of those things that's rarely talked about. We actually, at that same pay ownership valuation study that we referenced earlier, it was shocking and so disheartening to a certain degree to realize that on average, it's taking our women business owners 8 years before they pay themselves. And I think of that investment that for a lot of women goes into their businesses, that quite honestly, they're building for generational wealth. They're doing for all the right reasons. And yet that capitalization is never going to be caught up to the value that it really should be. To recap, not setting that stage as the outcome for you, but first I want to celebrate, I believe if my math is right, you've just passed the 8-year mark as being an incredible women business owner out there. Yay. How did this tension show up or not show up for you in thinking through the build of your business? Were there ever moments in time where your personal financial health and the health of the financial safety of the company were at odds? Did you ever feel like you were able to have this conversation and think through, like, can I go the distance? Because obviously going the distance is critical for the lifeblood of any business owner and any business therefore.
I think for me, because I think just the engineer and the researcher in me, while my start was really abrupt. So, but it was concern, or at least the knowledge of financial health was like day one. It was like I'd really essentially walked away from a very successful career with a goal to replace that income and increase, So my own personal financial health, I was at the time moving into being a newly divorced, single parent. I didn't have an option on working and not being able to garner income and revenue for the organization. That meant hitting the pavement extremely hard. And every deal had to be profitable. Every single deal had to be profitable. I think later on, as things started to grow, I realized too, from another peer, that to balance between that personal financial health and the financial health of the business, I had to start establishing multiple streams of income where I could scale the salary that I was taking away from the business. So just a very, blanket goal was like, I want to be able to pay myself enough to pay my mortgage every month. And so that was just an initial goal with the organization. And it meant also that I had to subsidize or supplement the other things that I needed in order to just maintain lifestyle. So with other streams of income, whether it was some were passive, some were just partnering with other organizations. I did a lot of corporate training, different things where it was just a dedicated stream. Like I didn't have to pull as much from the company, and I could scale my income and give myself raises as the company succeeded. So it was almost like a little bit of motivation there in doing so. So I was very lucky, but I also started out as a solopreneur. So I didn't have, my overhead was very small. Everyone was 1099 contracts. So when I got paid, they got paid. So it wasn't a lot of complication in that sense, but I didn't really start kind of seeing that balance or challenge grow until the contracts grew. Mm-hmm. And as the contracts grew, I kind of had a similar situation as Maria. Initially, it was like, oh, we're shaking and baking. This is fine. Then it was like, wait a minute. You're excited about the job. You're excited about, hitting that tier where now you're into, 6-figure, 7-figure contracts. And you start realizing like, oh, Lord, wait a minute. well, this trepidation comes when, like, yeah, you can pay yourself, but now I have to pay way more people. And I may not be able to pay myself if there's an issue with the client. And that was hard. It was like, these other little streams don't cover daycare, mortgage, just real things. And like, just moving along with what the ebbs and flows of the company and what was needed. And as you transition from 1099 to having employees, it was like great, because now I can bring more people on board. I can do all these great things. But that was really the first time I had to kind of really decide, like, I may have to forego paying myself in order to be able to secure the deal, make sure the work is completed as necessary. And that's a very hard space to be in. I was like, now I can't afford not to have money. Money's really good and it's necessary. My kids like to eat. I like to eat. And now we're having to decide between. So that was probably my first time where I really it was that tough decision between balancing, and where prior to that, it was real, but it wasn't real until there were other people at the table that were impacted by the success and scale of a job or project. So it was really, really challenging. And at that point, again, I'd done a really good job I'd made sure to carve out enough in the project. I always made sure with every job I paid myself. I included my work. I proposed in every proposal. I included that. So I didn't have to necessarily worry about not being compensated. But in the instance that, we had, I experienced a project where there was an error on our part where something wasn't included and we had to eat that cost. Guess whose pocket that came out of? Mine. So you live and you learn, and you're like, okay, well, we intended to make this amount off of the project. We made this amount, or I could say they made this amount. I walked away with a lot less than what I intended. And answering that question at the point of every conjecture, that fork in the road of, if I had to decide between paying my employees or paying myself, you pay the employees. But it's that real conversation with yourself and saying, okay, how much am I willing to sacrifice as a business owner? Because this is impacting my household and my children and my livelihood. So honestly, I wanted, to move away from having to answer that question with every single large scale project. So I immediately developed, more streams of income, different things that I could do very quickly that had a really quick turnaround from a cash perspective. Education was one lane for me that worked really well with some of the relationships with companies I had. Always had a budget for corporate training. So that was one avenue that worked for me, that if I did have to make that decision, I could acquire just cash very quickly that could sustain my household, even if it was just kind of 30 days at a time, just, okay, we got enough now, let's keep rolling to make it through those jobs. So I definitely would encourage others to do that. Like, you have to have, multiple ways, or you need to have some good friends that have a little liquid cash laying around to loan you something when you get in a pinch. But definitely, having to pick, it's hard. And sometimes you want to only have to make that decision when you have to. But I found that there are more times than not, while you want to prioritize your personal financial health, and that was mine. I have to, prioritize me first. But when you start looking at more people as your team grows, guess what? You may, you're prioritizing them in instances, and then you're prioritizing yourself. So I just shifted where need, and you just have to be flexible and nimble and be very creative.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. I'm sorry. I mean, I think it's counterintuitive, but it is one of those situations where in some ways, the more opportunity that befalls you, the more financial risk you're actually taking on. And again, it's not something that we all talk about. You're supposed to be like, no, I'm growing, right? Like it's supposed to get better, but you kind of take a sharp left sometimes. And I think the other issue that you talked about, the criticality of having founder optionality and this, like, what's my fallback? So like if my stakes are high, how do I make sure that I've got a safe place that I can go to if I need to, so that I can go the distance for that payroll pressure that is so very real that you talk about. You know, Maria, speaking of which, you your pressure is intense. You and your partner are both entrepreneurs. So again, you know, you've lived this very real. Have there been times when you've had to do that personal float in your business and sort of seen the challenges of thinking through, do I take the contract or not take the contract based on what this means to me and my family?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So I have actually not spoke about. No one have asked about this journey, which I love that you're asking this question, because what I'm about to share, I have nobody but my co-founder, which is my husband, who knows. But definitely has been. We have had some moments that have been really hard, and it's really funny because it is in that point of growth, where in the outside it's like, wow, they're killing it, they're growing, things are coming, but what they don't know is that means more capital. And so, for example, one of the instances that was really real for us was when we went out to seek investment, and it was just during COVID, and we had decided, just because of what COVID was happening, in order to keep up all of our stuff, we took everything out and we put every single saving into our company to keep it going. And we had a timeline, and we have 2 kids. And so, you know, we didn't realize, like, sometimes, you know, investment, you know, it takes a little bit more than you expect. And I remember just seeing, like, we had a timeline because we had put everything, and I don't advise this, but this was just, we're so committed to our mission and to see, and we had farmers back home, and we have people, and we knew our company was going somewhere. So there was that tangible. It's just that we needed to pull some things off at the right time. And I remember when one of the moments that the investment came, as a family, between our bank accounts and our pockets, we had $20. And it was like one of those moments that people were like, whoa, amazing, you guys are killing it. I was like, you don't know what's happening inside my house. And also another thing was that I remember when we were first started, we, like you said, I couldn't take a paycheck for the first few years. And the reason for that was, like, I was a full-time mom, and our choice to build this company meant that, you know, I needed to do both. Raise my kid full-time and build these. And that just meant that I didn't have the same amount of time that my peer who was single, my competitors that didn't have a family had. They could just, you know, do long hours and do the marketing for themselves and the sales for themselves and all of this for themselves, where I needed more help. And it was that decision to, like, okay, I choose to pay people to help me and grow my business for the long term, while I'm able to scale, because I'm gonna need more help. And it was that moment of finding grace. And I remember just being so like, oh, this is unfair, and this, like, having just grace, because my journey will be different from their journey. And so, but, you know, and all of these now, it taught me, and as a family, to be really just very smart on our own personal money, and make sure we had, like, you know, a very strong emergency fund, like all of those financial things. And it took us into these financial, you know, personal financial learnings, because we know the risk. And as entrepreneurs, I feel like now we give it all, you know. And it's funny that Caroline is in this call, because in one of those moments, as we were waiting for that investment and so on, we actually applied for a grant. Stacy Rice through Hello Alice, and we won. And that grant gave us a little bit more extra to be able to get to that point. So I just love that I'm sharing this conversation with you, because it definitely you're part of our journey.
Oh, I love to hear that. And I feel like you're the perfect example of, like, sometimes just that little extra bit of support can really help.
Exactly.
So beautifully said. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for hitting some real moments that founders go through. And again, it's easy to gloss over and talk about the wins, but we need to slow down and recognize what goes into making those wins even possible, and the heart and the soul that you show up for in making these journeys come true. So I'm actually going to go to asking a very important question in the somewhat similar note around the barriers that all of you in some way, shape, or form have talked about, whether it be networks, whether it be a bunch of no's, pitch decks that weren't going in your favor, whatever the case may be. But let's, again, keep that same intentionality that all of you have shown up with the honesty and the transparency today. And as we do, I'm going to invite our incredible audience joining today to also share what are some of the barriers that have shown up for you in raising capital. So please take a moment to complete that poll that you're seeing in the chat. But Leah, let's start with you. When you were thinking about capital, when you were exploring capital, what did you see as some of the very real barriers that showed up for you in that journey and towards the success that now we can look back on and go, it was worth it? But what were some of the barriers that you had to overcome in that process?
I feel like it's like, how much time do you have, right? Just because
I know. Sorry about that.
There's so many. Well, I think Carolyn actually covered a lot of that as she was sharing her journey. I think there's a lot there's those like external barriers, right? That again, the system was just not created for women entrepreneurs, right? And Maria covered a few barriers where you just go to the bank and they look at you as another just kind of like a line item, right, in their ledger. And if you don't fit that perfect profile, like they're just gonna, deny you. And then you have to be really creative and where you seek this capital. And thanks God for this, for the CDFI industry. And we actually love working with working solutions and love hearing that CDFIs, just keep showing up for us as women entrepreneurs. So I think for us personally, it's probably just nothing new, right? It's like, it's who do you know? It's how do you show up? It's what you look like, what is expected from you. What school did you go to? Because again, like I think just when we started our, venture funding journey, you kind of like feel like you had to fit in a certain box, right? And unless you fit into this certain box, it's just going to be really hard for you to raise this money. And so, yeah, it looks like we have very similar journey with Hello Alice, where, we attracted a lot of women first because we really wanted to bring someone who's very much values aligned. And then we wanted to buy a little bit of time for ourselves to kind of like prove them wrong a little bit, right? And to really move from that, oh, like how cute it is, like you are two women entrepreneurs trying to change the world, to like, oh, actually you have like a real like business model and like something that can really scale and something that can really change the system and something that can really be can result in multiples, right? That VC funds are interested in. So I don't know if I have like anything new to share. I would also say, and maybe that's what we don't talk a lot about, is just kind of like our internal, right, kind of like barriers that we build for ourselves, right? It's just, when you go and fundraise out there, someone is fundraising and someone has to run the business. And the reality of like solo entrepreneurs, right? They have to do it both at the same time, which is like, I have so much, respect for people who do that, because it's like running two full-time jobs. In C-Note case, like we're lucky that, I have a wonderful CEO who can like take the lead on the fundraising and I can like support her, right, with running the company. And then if you have to switch, like we'll switch. And then I think, and then in addition to that is just that, again, like this internal battle all the time, right? Like, am I worth it, right? Like, after hearing, 400 no's, like at some point you do start questioning yourself, right? And you're like, I think I need to like invest in some therapy right now, just because like, I feel like I'm just, something is wrong with me, right? And I need to either find other female founders, which to me was really helpful, like to surround myself with some of the other female founders who had, who have maybe like a few steps beyond me, right? And who can, again, share their failures and share their, successes and kind of like learn and inspire from them. And then I think it's very important, like where your family stand on this, right? And again, kind of like how you navigate these dynamics. I can tell you, like, my family didn't know I was running C-Note for 4 years because I was terrified to tell them that I have my own company, because I just knew it's going to like totally blow up the world, because they're still in Belarus, they still expect me to be on Wall Street, like making this paycheck and living in Manhattan, right? That's the life that they imagine for me. And so when I took a very different journey, it was really hard for me to be vulnerable and tell them, because again, I feel like I was just, bringing them down, right? Or failing the expectation that they had. And so, so I would say it's probably just a lot of external factors and a lot of internal factors that you really have to navigate and just surround yourself, right, with the network that can just kind of like keep it going, like encourage you to keep going and have this North Star, right? I'm sure for all of us, our business is that North Star that we have, and I'm sure it's a legacy, right, that we're building. We're like, this is our first, second, third child, right? And that's what we're doing it for. And we see the light there. And we just have to remind ourselves, because that journey is, it's not an easy. It's definitely one of the hardest things that you probably have to do.
So beautifully said. So beautifully said. And you touched on so many factors, again, that are often left behind: pursuit of raising capital, being a founder, being everything from CEO to chief janitor at the same time, and the pressures of like, how do I mix this with my family, and the pressures of trying to be there for the people of why I'm building a business in the first place. It's so real, and it's so tough. In the interest of time, Caroline, I'm going to come back to the mic drop moment that you uttered a little bit ago. Thank you for opening it up. And everything in the world of entrepreneurs is always moving. These last couple of weeks have certainly been no exception to that rule. And I'm just curious, as the founder and CEO of an incredibly high growth based company, how do you even begin to navigate or thinking through navigating the externalities of unexpected changes in the market, like obviously relating to capital and the structure of like what's available in capital one day versus what might not be the next? How do you balance stability with instability in those times, if that is even a dream state for founders to hope for?
Yeah, I mean, it's a crazy market right now, right? And I think there's a lot of trepidation, there's a lot of nervousness, and VCs are jittery, the banks are jittery, and entrepreneurs are jittery. It's a scary time. I think we've been in this rocky period, right? We dealt with the pandemic, we dealt with all these things. The reality is, I think there's always a high degree of risk in entrepreneurship, whether the market is stable, whether the market is not, it's always tough. And so one, I think, is just bracing yourself for that ride. If you choose this path, that is part of the package. The other piece of advice I always give founders is act quickly. The moment can change at any moment, whether you're trying to close a contract, whether you're trying to close funding, it can change on a dime. And so the second there is interest, close that round in pieces. If you need to get a first close, you could always do a second close later. But as soon as that commitment is made, close it. We've personally had people commit, the market's changed, they've taken that commitment away. You have to sort of seize the moment. The other thing is really focus on, Mariela mentioned it, but focus on the fundamentals of your business. That we always talk a lot about financial fitness and what that means, but it is, ensuring that you have funds set aside for a rainy day, that you're prepared, that you're giving yourself plenty of runway to go raise capital, because I can't remember which of you mentioned it, but it takes far longer than you think. Oftentimes it's 6 months plus by the time you start those conversations, sometimes up to a year when you started those conversations to when you can actually close, by the time you get through legal. We were in a situation ourselves at one point, so I feel for you, Mariela, what you were saying, but we were literally 24 hours away from, we had already cut ourselves down to minimum wage. We had cut out every expense we possibly could, and we were 24 hours away from not being able to make payroll. We'd already taken a second mortgage on our home, and we got cash in the bank, and it was like this. I mean, I just remember breathing this sigh of relief of like, okay, we can do this. Like, we're going to do this. And also, we're never going to put ourselves in this situation again. And we never have come anywhere close to that, nor do I ever want to come that close. But it's a lesson learned. And so I think financial fitness is so critical and important, in how you're managing cash flow, how much runway you're giving your company, how conservative you are. And it's a balance, right? You don't want to be too conservative with your spend because you do need to invest in growth and step out on that limb, but also making sure that you are prepared for all scenarios, that when you model out your financial model, you're looking at a worst case scenario and you know how you can react in that scenario. But you're also working towards that best case scenario and putting enough capital to work. We talk a lot with our board about, what bets we're going to take at any one point in time and making sure that we're taking one or two strategic bets, but that we have a lot of safety in the core operations and that we feel really confident on pieces of our business, but we're always sort of pushing the boundaries for what's next as well.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. The salient advice in all times, but it feels like especially right now to be grounded in, pick your bets, be strategic in them, be thoughtful in them, and bring along the people that you need to in those conversations so that you're not having to do it all alone without support. And support is such a critical thing in the field of entrepreneurship, as you've heard from these amazing women business owners. I knew this hour was going to go quickly, and it already is upon us. I don't even know how that's feasible. I've got one more question before I let them all go today. But before I do that, I'm going to launch one last poll in front of all of you. You've heard them all reflect in various ways on the importance of network and having people that believed in their vision. We'd like to hear from all of you today on how much support you feel you're having in your network, or how much more support you might like to see in your network. That again just helps us continue to think creatively, strategically on how we can unlock more opportunities for network support for our women business owners who are doing so much for all of us across every community in this incredible nation today. So here's the last question to each of you. If you could do anything differently when you think back on your journey in raising capital, in the exploration of capital, and how you looked at yourself in the mirror and thought about capital every day, what would it be? What would be the advice that you want every woman to walk away with today, knowing from your experience? I won't pick up people. I'll see if we have a volunteer to start. Anyone want to go first?
I'm happy to jump in with that one. I had a real turning point when we were raising capital. I remember specifically this one meeting where we were so broken down. We were like, what? We've got so many no's, like, what do we have to lose here? And I remember Elizabeth and I had this conversation. We're like, you know what? This is a great opportunity. Like, we legitimately believe in what we're doing. This is a great opportunity. And whoever doesn't invest in us, like, that's their loss. And as soon as we made that shift in our capital raise, we walked into these meetings with confidence. We really started, we got on the offensive versus the defensive. And I think every investor meeting that we ever had after that, just, it felt different in the room. And I think so much of it was just our own mentality in terms of like truly recognizing that we bet on ourselves. Like, we bet on ourselves and we believed in this business. And we were going to do this with or without that other person on the other side of the table. And I think it was the best thing. It's advice I often give other founders is just remember why you're there. Remember why you bet on yourself.
So lovely. Thank you.
I think for me, even in raising with some other companies and attending those meetings, it's already tumultuous as you're going in there. So I echo what Carolyn's saying, is that you have to believe that you are the answer and that you have a choice, and that just because you're at a point of need, it does not mean that you have to say yes to anyone that wants to invest in you. I've seen through the due diligence process, you feel like you got to put up your second child in order to get, not even close to what you need in raising, but you really have to echo that, like, I am an answer. And I believe that I'm an answer. And I believe that the product and service that I'm offering is a solution to more than just myself and the constituents on my board. But at the same time, it's walking in with that energy and space that I have the right to say no to you. Whether it's a billionaire sitting across from us, a multimillionaire sitting across from us, an angel investor that is trying to, in my case, some are just trying to meet a quota and their rules don't align. What they want to do don't even align with the business that we have. They just want to say that they've invested maybe in a woman of color. But I have the right to say no. and that we are an answer. So definitely I echo with Carolyn. You have to believe in what you're doing, and you're not begging when you go into the space, but you are presenting a very profitable solution that they need to be honored that they have the opportunity to invest in what we're doing.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna echo very much what they all say, because I could assimilate myself in those journeys. I remember on the first times I felt like I was begging and I had shame and I felt very intimidated. I just felt so intimidated because I didn't went to the right school, because I had all the stats in my head. And it took a mentor, an investor, for him. He sat down every time with me after every meeting, said, do you know that you are bringing, like Terika was saying, a solution? Like, you're giving them an opportunity to come into Progeny, to this thing that is growing. Like, they should be feeling, amazed by what you're doing and just understand the value that you're bringing. Like, it's amazing what you're doing. And so it took, as well as like, how do you say, like a moment to realize I'm not here begging. I'm not representing just like a cutesy. I have something solid and I'm going somewhere, and I know I'm going somewhere. And so they get a chance for me to say yes, put them in the backseat and see how it grows. So I'm presenting, like they were saying, an opportunity. So, and then another thing they said was, these mentors, like, do a list of 100 VCs or more. And after you had 50 no's, you will be closer to your yes. And so he shifted that mindset of no being something negative towards like, okay, I'm getting closer. Because it will most probably won't be the first one you reach out, won't be your first yes. It's like speed dating, and you just need to so know who you are and what's your worth. Because I had comments of like, you don't look like someone that will have been able to build this, or like someone that will have this success doesn't look like you. Or I had VC saying, well, only take this meeting if you come to, have some drinks with me at the hotel. Or just on the whole spectrum of stuff. Or I have also like, well, I'll give you the loan if it was on your husband's name, the company. And so understanding your worth, who you are, I think it was so important, and owning that power when you go into that meeting.
Yeah, gosh, I feel like it's so hard to close on that. I would again echoing everything the lady said. I think it's definitely learn not to walk in the meetings of justifying ourselves. I think this is also where we started, right? You're just like justifying everything that you're showing in the pitch. Rather than kind of like really going out there with a strong story, and I think also just changing that perception of we're not here just for capital, we're here for the partner, because you also don't want to be looked at just kind of like as a transaction. And I think honestly, if you just continue raising capital as just for that like even financial return, right, or again just kind of like as a transaction to get that multiple. When things go south, right, be it, again, a bank failure, right, or be it a COVID, or be it somewhere else, the people that will really show up for you there is the one who is really interested in like making your venture success, making your business success, and kind of like, as equally excited about what you're building. And so I think there's wonderful opportunities there, be it, CDFI that show up, right, for Maria's example, and when someone would need PPP loan, right, a big bank might say no, but CDFI will say like, what else I can do for you, right? Or again, like when you're running out of capital, who can actually be the one who is like giving you that bridge loan, right? So I think like really thinking about that relationship, not as a transactional, but really partnership, and really seeking this type of investors who know will show up for you, in any circumstances. Celebrate with you your successes, but also show up there for you when you really need, you really need support.
I love all of this. It is an exceptional way to end our time together. You are the answer. You are enough. You are the expert in your business. and the alignment between who you choose to invite into your business at a capital layer is your decision. Even though sometimes it can feel like the most daunting and scary and powerless environment, you are the answer. And we are here in support of all of you. I want to go back to revisiting our original intention as we set out our time today and realize that this is exactly what these women have shared with you today. This belief that you can work smart when it comes to raising capital. We are grateful for all of you and the work that you're doing in this world. We are thankful that you are out there every day paving the way to make our communities brighter, more vibrant, and more healthy. And to each and every single panelist joining us today, thank you. Your insights, your time, your grace has been gratefully received. And I know to all of them watching today, they feel that way too. Thank you so much. And we will be in touch with all of you very soon. Take care.
Well, we've come a long way, maybe. Perhaps we should say we have come a long way, but we still got a long way to go. Making sure we really do have an even playing field for all women business owners. And would you all agree, it is great to know that we have champions and inspiring women like the ones we just heard from, who are not only setting a great example, but also setting the stage for the next phase of progress. As we heard from SBA Administrator Guzman and her team, this is what this summit is all about, reflecting on the progress that has been made over the past 35 years since the passage of HR 5050, the Women's Business Ownership Act, and pausing just long enough to deeply consider the important work that lies ahead. This conversation really was the perfect segue for our next panel. Empowering women entrepreneurs, supporting equity, uplifting the small business sisterhood. Please welcome with me our moderator, Tené Dolphin, Executive Director for the National Women's Business Council, to lead this critical conversation, exploring how women business owners and community leaders are drivers of change, creating their own networks of support while also leveraging their own business platforms to advocate for greater equity.
Greetings. Thank you again for joining the second annual Women's Business Summit and this panel entitled Empowering Women Entrepreneurs, Supporting Equity, Uplifting the Small Business Sisterhood. It is such a pleasure to be here today and to have this incredible opportunity to connect with an impressive group of women business owners and impactful thought leaders who are helping to create safe spaces for women entrepreneurs to grow, to get connected, and get financed. My name is Tené Dolphin, and I serve as the Executive Director of the National Women's Business Council, which is one of about 1,000 federal advisory committees across the federal government. Before we begin, I'd like to provide a bit of context and background on NWBC. NWBC was created in 1988 with the passage of HR 5050, the Women's Business Ownership Act, and was established to serve as an independent source of advice and policy recommendations to the White House, Congress, and the administrator of SBA on issues related to women's business enterprise. But not only did HR 5050 establish NWBC, this landmark bill also eliminated the individual remaining state laws requiring women to have a male relative or husband to co-sign for a business loan. It also established the Women's Business Center program within SBA's Office of Women's Business Ownership, and the legislation required the U.S. Census Bureau to include women-owned data corporations in their data collection. As a part of our mission, NWBC regularly convenes diverse women business owners, entrepreneurs, and leaders from across the country and across industries to help connect their voices to policymakers and key stakeholders in Washington, D.C. Today's panel will delve into the playbooks of successful women who are contributing to the local and national ecosystems and advocating for greater equity for women business owners. With that said, and before we begin this discussion, I'd like to acknowledge once again the support of the SBA Administrator, Isabella Casillas Guzman, and the Acting Associate Administrator for the Office of Women's Business Ownership, Donald Smith. I'm so grateful for their dedication to ensuring that more women have their voice heard and a seat at the table, and an opportunity to grow and succeed, and others to do the same. It is my absolute delight to moderate today's panel and to be joined by a powerhouse of women leaders. These women have their ear to the ground and their finger on the pulse of diverse women entrepreneurs across the country and their unique needs and challenges. They're making a real difference in supporting the small business sisterhood. Our incredible panel will discuss strategies and identify best practices, sharing how trailblazing women, market and change makers are not only bringing novel products and service to consumers, but also contributing to their communities by providing jobs, community-based co-working, innovating safe spaces to improve supports for a growing sisterhood of BIPOC women entrepreneurs, as well as effective on-ramps and meaningful mentorships at home and abroad. We are joined today by Giselle George Joseph. Giselle is a Chief Operating Officer of the Global Investment Research Division at Goldman Sachs. She has served in leading roles, publishing research that addresses inclusive growth, including authoring Black Womanomics, Equalizing Entrepreneurship. She also serves as co-head of the New York, New Jersey City chapter of the Black Network and is co-sponsor of the Global Investment Research Inclusion and Diversity Council and a member of the 1 Million Women Steering Committee. We also have Jamie Glochet. Jamie is the co-director and co-founder of Native Women Lead, where she co-leads key efforts in access to capital, fund design, partnership, advancement, and policy advocacy while leading program design, international development, and data evaluation and oversight. Jamie continues to work in partnership with Roan Horse Consulting, LLC, to co-design and develop initiatives on economic inclusion and ecosystem building. She is also a dedicated member of the National Women's Business Council. We also have Marla Belanek. Marla is the president and CEO of the National Association for Latino Community Asset Builders. She is a veteran in the area of economic and community development, and she brings over 20 years of experience in small business development, community-based finance, financial services, and international aid, with an emphasis on Latin America and the U.S. Latino population. Prior to joining NowCab, Marla served as the executive director of the Latino Economic Development Center here in Washington, D.C., leading regional efforts to drive the economic and social advancements of low and moderate income Latinos by equipping them with skills and tools to achieve financial independence. And last but not least, we have Nicole Kober. Nicole is the principal managing partner of Kober Johnson and Romney, an award-winning legal and business consulting firm. She's an executive coach and a business strategist who specializes in developing management, legal, and branding strategies for leaders in the business world. She formerly served on the National Women's Business Council, and she authored CEO of My Soul, published in 2016, where she shares valuable business advice with true accounts of relationship struggles, family triumphs, and self-reflection. In 2022, Kober founded the Bow Collective, an organization of the nation's top Black women, small business owners who come together to partner on contracts, capital, and communication initiatives. I'd like to first start with a question for each of the panelists. What drew you to this work of supporting women entrepreneurs? And why is the economic empowerment of women fundamental for our nation's financial growth and development? Let's get started with Jamie.
Well, my peers drew me to this work. Previous to my work at Native Women Lead, I worked for a CDFI, and I was trying to get money into the hands of Native entrepreneurs and met a bunch of Indigenous women who actually are the co-founders of Native Women Lead, and got to witness their entrepreneurial journey. And then also see that they were very much like me. We were just Indigenous women in this country trying to figure out how to support ourselves, our families, and our communities through the pathway of entrepreneurship. And I don't know what your next question was or the follow-up to that. I apologize.
No, that was good, Jamie. I want to ask that same question of Giselle. What drew you to this
So,
work?
I mean, it's actually just it has been such a journey. And at Goldman, we like to say that we support women and we support diverse initiatives because it's the right thing to do, it's the fair thing to do, but it's also good for business and it's good for the economy. And if you just sort of think of where, we've come as women today, women make up half the population. They are more educated. I'll keep going back between we and they from the researcher perspective, but women are more educated today than they were say 50 years ago, 40 years ago, even a decade ago. Um, Women direct 80% of consumption in the US. We make 70% of travel decisions. We buy 65% of the new car purchases. Like, we can go on and on with the stats. Really powerful consumer base. Women are an economic force, one that men and companies and society cannot disregard. And in fact, I think really important to accommodate and better leverage and empower women in order to progress in society. So I think to your second question, Tené, I think it's really important that women embrace that power. I had a woman recently, an entrepreneur, a Black woman, say to me that she's owned her business for many, many years, and only in the past year did she truly realize and start to embrace her power. Women have always played a very critical role in families and in communities all over the world, and a lot of empty space that I think continues to need filling. And there's a lot of work to do. So if not women, then who?
That's right. That's right, Giselle. If not women, who? I mean, I think we do it every time, and you're right. Sometimes it is hard for us to recognize our own power, but the power that we hold is tremendous. And when we recognize it, there's nothing we can't do. So thank you so much. And those stats were so on point. I want to move over now to Nicole. Nicole, can you talk about what drew you to this work?
Sure, absolutely. A couple of things. I'm glad to be home. I consider the council my extended family. I was very proud to serve for 3 years, and I will say that that answers the question, part of the question, because as a member of both the council, I served as a co-chair of the Access to Capital Subcommittee. So we got a lot of data on what challenges that women have with their businesses and access to capital. That's one. But I've been a serial entrepreneur for 2 decades, and I have been a Black woman my whole life. And knowing that there are a couple of things that resonate. Number one, entrepreneurship is difficult under the best of circumstances. But when you layer that with various access to capital issues, lack of awareness of a community, lack of a community within a community. And what do I mean by that? Black women, we are underreported, right? Our stats, they are rarely reported either by government agencies, right? Banking institutions. So one of the reasons that we came together as the collective is that we know where we are, we know our stats, and we want to report out. The C that we focus on is creating community, but also communication, shaping the narrative. So when I served on the council, we had this stat that was reported by American Express that for every woman-owned business that made an average of 140 plus thousand, that Black women business only made 24,000. That was astonishing. But the group that we have put together, their narrative is different. They are overperforming. So out of this poll, we have done research. This group of over 100 women in the collective, their average gross annual sales are $1 million. They have employed over 1,500 employees. They have 26 different industries represented. They are now not only coming together for contracts strategically and coming together for capital and being advocates, but they're also pulling up the sisters behind them, creating those relationships. And we think strategically that is going to put a seismic shift of connection within this small business ecosystem. And I wouldn't have it any other way.
I mean, with each of you, when you keep sharing from Jamie to Nicole to Giselle, the information and the power that comes behind it is just phenomenal. And it really is feeding this conversation. Marla, what brought you to this work? Tell us about what drives you and how you support Latino entrepreneurs.
Absolutely. So, kind of broadly, what attracts me to working with entrepreneurs and just entrepreneurship in general is that, entrepreneurs really harness this concept of creating opportunity for yourself, having agency over your own life and the trajectory that your life is going to take for you and your family. And so, and even your community, honestly. So that is really what draws me to this kind of work, is anything that can facilitate individuals who are that driven themselves, whether that be capital, technical assistance, consulting services, what have you. To be able to be a part of that journey is an honor and it's extremely exciting. There are over 2 million Latina-owned businesses in the U.S. That represents an 87% growth over the past 15 years. So this is a growing segment of the small business population. And I know we'll talk more as the panel goes on, but I think there is no one better than a woman to be an entrepreneur, because it's in our DNA. It's, how our lives play out. And so really excited to talk a little bit more about that as we get into the conversation.
That's absolutely right. I think we started businesses before, we started houses, right? Like we are the home, we take care of the home, we take care of this, we take care of that. Half of those things we just don't get paid for, but we're definitely the entrepreneurs. Nicole, let me ask you next, why is it important to bring allies to the table? I know that you've created the Bow Collective, but I've also know that you have circled yourselves with some allies. How do you do that? Why do you do that? And can you share your approach and why it works?
Yes. So thank you for that. In terms of our strategy, we believe that bringing awareness and creating community is essential. We also know that when you look at the stats as to why women-owned businesses lag behind their male counterparts, it's really the establishment of the ecosystem, right? Mm-hmm. That you may be in business for yourself, but you're not by yourself. It is very hard for small businesses, and I continue to run my businesses, to work outside, to create relationships, number one. And that was very intentional about us. What you will hear of, if you haven't heard about the Bow Collective, you will hear, we are a sisterhood, a business sisterhood. As women, we are collective by our nature. We are always the first ones to chip in, the first ones to support. This was a both and. We realized that we needed to create an young, fabulous girls network. We don't want to call it old boys, but we needed a network. And it's challenging for women. It's challenging for small business. It's challenging for women of color that are usually left out of the reindeer games. So being intentional about that community, number one. Number two, I have been blessed to have a small business ecosystem for 2 decades. So I started out, I always say I'm the poster child for the SBA. 20 years ago, I got a 504 loan. I went to SCORE as my mentor. I grew my first small business. So when that business closed, I was acutely aware of this amazing support system. Sometimes it's challenging. So I wanted to be that town crier. I wanted to bring my friends in to see these amazing women-owned businesses, to create that community. And so that support of allies within U.S. Black Chamber, WeBank, SBA, it is so NMSDC, it's so global. And we are members of all of those entities. We are just being strategic internally and bringing them to our table as well.
That's right. Nicola's created a table. I am so excited about that. Um, Giselle, you talk about a number of items in your 2022 report entitled Black Womanomics. Can you delve a little bit into the data that you found? What would you share as your key findings about that report? And what makes Black women entrepreneurs so unique?
It's such a great segue from everything Nicole just said. I love your poster child reference, Nicole, because what we find is really that Black women have been disadvantaged. A lot of women of color are, but Black women have been more disadvantaged than many other groups in the U.S. So at Goldman, we've had a long history of thought leadership on the topic of womenomics. We've gone back 20 years doing research on womenomics, but in the last couple of years, I was really pleased that we were able to focus some of our attention on inclusive growth research really on Black women. And that's in part because Black women in the US, the history of Black women in the US is quite complex, right? Because you have the intersectionality of race, but then there's the gender aspect of it. And so post George Floyd, we felt like that was an opportunity because you have those moments in American history where something big happens and it sort of brings back the idea of racial inequality to the surface. And that was an opportunity for us at Goldman to actually delve into the Black in the union and the disadvantage and the opportunity that laid with that group of women in the US. So I'll highlight 3 of our findings from the second report that we did last year, which Nicole sort of treaded in that area already. But number one, across all industries that we looked at, Black women-owned businesses had just lower capital. And that was one of the biggest barriers to success that Black women had. Number 2, the playing field is not level, right? Like we want to get to a level playing field in the US. We're not there. And because of historical systemic discriminatory policies, and because discrimination in the credit market today is still very tangible, Black and just lower levels of personal wealth and higher exposure to high cost liabilities. So as an example, we found that Black women were 5 times more likely than white men to rely on very expensive payday loans, right? Which is sort of not a great way of getting credit. And then number 3, Black Americans and especially Black women lag on financial knowledge. And that, obviously we're comparing to white Americans, but of course, financial health and financial education are sort of intertwined. And so if, Black women are lagging there, that's another barrier to success in the businesses that we will find in. So we walked away, I think, seeing the opportunity. We know from our research that if we, as a country, as a community, just, as society generally, if we're able to invest in Black women, in their businesses, in their health, in their neighborhoods, in their education, that we can lift the level of GDP in the US by as much as 2%. And that is a very conservative, right? And that's just 14% of the women population in the US. So imagine how much more we could be doing if we invested in women across the board.
Giselle, I cannot wait to talk to you offline. I'm sorry. I'm so encouraged. And Tené, if you guys give me just 30 seconds to say, we applaud Goldman Sachs for their intentionality about focusing in on bringing resources and relationships to Black women with their 1 million Black women endeavor of training. I think we would be natural allies and colleagues because our organization is not simply training, it is that connection. You do not graduate out. So we have dozens of our members that went through the Goldman Sachs program. So that training, that financial acumen is just spot on, Giselle. And again, we see you, we're out here, we want you to see us, that that those stats, we see them too, but we are outliers. And so we need to be studied as well. Where are the exceptional businesses? How can we replicate them? How can we give resources to them so that they can pull and mentor those coming behind us?
100%.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Both of them. So much so that I'm going to skip around now because you guys both opened up the access to capital conversation a little bit. And I've got a question for Marla, who is, connected to financing. With so much of the business is about performing to the expectations of others, right? And playing to presupposed rules and all of those things. This is especially true when it comes to eligibility requirements for different access types of capital. Marla, should the goal be to make women more capable? Yes, to the financial education. We're not refuting that. But should the goal be to make more women capable to meeting the traditional standards? Or is it changing the standards themselves to meet those who have been left out? Or is it both?
So I think, this question definitely has sort of had me thinking. I think my fear is that the implication of that kind of line of questioning is that there's something deficient in women or other individuals who have challenges accessing capital to start small businesses. And we all on this call would agree that that's not the case. I think what traditional lenders tend to lack is flexibility and an ability to kind of look at a full picture, whereas alternative lenders like community development financial institutions are really looking at a whole picture. So and there are many reasons for that. There are time constraints for traditional lenders. There are cost constraints for traditional lenders that preclude them from actually taking a deeper dive into the profile of someone who may be coming before them. A lot of creativity has to go into developing projections for a startup business that doesn't have any track record from someone who, may not have ever run a business in that field, but it certainly has a lot of the building blocks to be able to succeed in business. And so I think it's more a question of like rigidity versus flexibility than the profile of the applicant or the content of the application. It's more about kind of like really being a partner with someone and wanting to get to yes in that financing relationship rather than like a rigid set of criteria that folks need to fit into or fit or not fit into. But I think that's why CDFIs exist. I will say there are kind of downward pressures even on CDFIs to, perform at standards where it even makes it difficult for CDFIs to make loans that we want to make and that we're in place to make. But I'll save that for a different conversation. But I think women are entirely capable of, taking on loans, repaying loans, running successful businesses. None of that is a question for me. So I think it's really about lenders being more flexible, more open, and more holistic.
Well, that is a whole nother conversation that we would love to get into because we had a roundtable last year where we looked at access to capital. Nicole was a part of that robust conversation. I know that she is chomping at the bit, but we all know that we've got a limited amount of time. But Marla, you hit on so many an amazing points about the lack of flexibility that there may be in the traditional lender, but how do we either build flexibility in? And I think that still kind of goes to the question about the system or the traditions or the requirements. Yes, we can meet and do all those things, but is there something on the other side that needs to be adjusted? So we may follow up with that because as I tried to say at the beginning of this conversation, NWBC holds various conversations so that we can get learnings and understandings, and it really does impact and influence our policy recommendations. So we might be tapping you a little bit. And so now let's go to the National Women's Business Council member that is on the call, Jeni. We know and have discussed why this work is important, particularly post-pandemic. Nicole has highlighted how BIPOC women are building their own ecosystems and creating their own table. But how do we also bring systematic change through policy, coalition building, and advocacy to make sure women, including women of color, are represented at every table? On top of that, Jamie, tell me, which of the NWBC's 2022 policy recommendations do you think would be a game changer for all women business owners, especially those operating in tribal and or rural communities?
Oh, I love this question. Thank you. So to speak on some of the other points named earlier, we built a community for ourselves because we weren't seeing ourselves represented in those communities, whether at the local level or the state level, federal level, even within institutions, financial sectors, we weren't seeing Indigenous women at all levels of leadership and power and decision making. So that's why we started this work to essentially enact systems change. So to your other question too, I also think it's really important that we're naming that we're trying to work in a system that wasn't designed by us or for us, but also changing and challenging that system at the same time. And that requires true ecosystems change. And as I said before, systems change. In order for women, whether Indigenous women, women of color, women business owners, we play a significant role in not only economically stabilizing our families, but the economies. We're half of the population, we're contributing to the economies, and therefore we should be benefiting as well from that. A lot of entrepreneurs that we serve, we always say to start with your circle, to build a circle of support, especially as an entrepreneur. It's a very lonely journey, and as women, I think we innately know that we have to resource ourselves. If we're as mothers, caretakers, we know that it takes a village to raise a child. It also takes, I think, a village and an ecosystem to make sure your business is fruitful and successful and sustainable. So we're trying to not only build a community for folks to lean into, provide capital tools that are cognizant of that holistic picture of what a women entrepreneur needs, and do some storytelling that women do business in a very different way, and that to the question earlier around types of frameworks that are now instituted, even within CDFI or financial sectors, investment sectors, folks are utilizing frameworks that were created by men. For example, the 5 C's of credit. It's not inclusive of everybody's lived situation, historical situation, or even the fact that the system isn't built for us or designed for us. So we're challenging that. I would also say that we need to make sure we're increasing visibility of women of color, and ensuring that we're not erased from the conversation, and that having representation at all levels ensures that we continue to design the systems for ourselves and create opportunities so that all of us benefit. On the National Women's Business Council, I also sit on the Access to Capital Subcommittee, and that's one that's really exciting about our policy recommendations that recently we put forth in creating a financing bridge so that women are able to have small business growth, making sure that we're creating a community and supporting a community of women investing in women. In Native Women Lead, we've learned from our community that often folks essentially feel discriminated on based on their gender and race. They're saying that financial systems aren't easy to work with. They're often declined funding. They're undercapitalized. They're getting high interest rates. There's products and services and tools that are not really cognizant of their lived situation and their lived experience. And we look at statistics all over, whether in investment or banks, that women often don't receive the funding that they need. Another thing I'm really excited about is essentially gaining fresh insights from rural ecosystems and tribal communities, just to amplify the voices that are there, because we don't really understand what's happening on the ground from those perspectives, and we really need to amplify those voices and center those voices so that we can create systems and products and tools and capital resources that are cognizant of their whole being.
Wow, thank you so much. And thank you so much for lifting up those 2022 policy recommendations. Again, we put out an annual report every year. I will share how to connect to that annual report at the end of this conversation. But Jamie, thank you for your dedication and your service and your voice and representation in this conversation. I know that we are running out of time, but I do have two more questions. And the second to last is, this is exhausting work, right? For everybody, the entrepreneur, for the ecosystem builders. We're just also in really different and difficult times. How does taking care of ourselves help us take care of our community and our networks? How do we create space for this? I'd like for everybody to answer that if you can. So let's start again with, this time, Giselle.
So my husband told it to me perfectly last week. So I'm going to quote him on a women panel. I'm going to quote the man. But anyway, he was basically encouraging me to take more restoration time for myself. And when I told him that I don't have the time to take time, his response was that a version of you that's exhausted and burnt out and unhappy and ultimately less productive doesn't work for anybody. So, it's obviously something but sometimes you need somebody to remind you of that, and somebody close to you to remind you of that. Like taking care of ourselves, being physically and socially and mentally fit and healthy, it has to be part of that time budget. Like your time to be able to just get back to a good, healthy place has to be part of that thing that you do every single day. And so that's kind of how I look at it. Obviously our finance industry is incredibly busy and competitive, but I definitely find ways to make sure that I'm taking care of Giselle in the scenario.
Wonderful. And you said it, budgeting that time in, because if you don't budget the time, we know these things, but we do need those that are close to us to not only remind us, but almost hold our hand and make us do it sometimes, because it is so hard. Nicole, can you answer that question? How do you make space for this?
So I'm the jaded old lady on the group. I'll take it. I have a couple of rules. The first thing is we don't say the B word, right? When you're in community with other people, the B word is busy, right? We are all highly leveraged, and to do this work, especially philanthropic work, etc., when you're putting extra on your plate, you presume that the sister next to you is also extraordinarily leveraged on her time. What we do is we start to say, what you commit your time to is what you value. So with that, with what Giselle said, if we are not spending any time on our care, that means we do not value our care, right? So that's the second piece of it. So you have to quantify and measure the time that you need to really decompress. And I have a premium value on time, and I need to recharge, right? Because we are so externally focused. Our output is extreme. I do not show up the same. I'm not an Energizer bunny by any means. If I don't have time to just not talk to family, to you, to community, I'm a depleted person. And as her husband so adequately says, you're not serving anyone. But I also say, I have this little mental pie chart in my head, that I don't disappoint the same people all the time. Somebody is going to get disappointed, right? But it's not going to always be the same people. So one day, Tené, I'm going to say no because I have to go to a kid's soccer game. Or one day I'm going to have to tell that kid, no, I can't go to your track meet because I want to be with my brilliant National Women Business Council sisters, or I want to go out with my husband. But I have an internal pie chart that I try to evaluate on a regular basis. And when you're out of alignment, when you haven't called back that parent, like on the second, or out, you haven't seen them, or you haven't connected with your girlfriends. And so I trust myself first to know what I need to balance the people in my life, but I do feel very comfortable putting myself first. allocating and being in governance over my time so that the best version of me shows up in those places instead of the eye rolling, exhausted version that no one will love anyway.
That is amazing. I've never heard of the pie chart, but I like it. I like it, Nicole. Marla, what about you? How do you make space for this?
So I'll just give two quick comments. So one, I think, is making it easy. Like I recently, and by recent, I mean like in the past, actually probably since the pandemic, discovered walking, which sounds like the most basic thing, but you know, it can be done anywhere. It can be done really anytime. You know, and all I have to do is put on a pair of sneakers and walk out my door. So, and it can be done, you know, in short spurts, long spurts. But I feel like the more difficult that sort of you time is to carve out, it's just not going to happen. So luckily, this is something that I really enjoy. I love being out in nature. And so being able to kind of just have that at my fingertips at any time, or at my toe tips, I guess I should say, is really, it's worked very well for me because it's just so accessible. And the second thing I would just say, and not to sound cynical, but I do think a lot of, you know, what has been sold to us as women as self-care is like, you know, making ourselves more beautiful. So getting a manicure or like deep conditioning our hair. And I think that's wonderful if that's something that recharges you. But I want to just remind our folks who are listening that like, really what is restorative to you is self-care, not something that, you know, makes your outward appearance more attractive. And I think we get confused by messaging that's out there, and just wanted to kind of make that little PSA that it has to be something that makes you feel good, that recharges your batteries and brings you back to life as a better version of yourself to wherever you're going to be showing up.
That's absolutely right. Because sometimes going to get my nail done is actually a little bit more stressful because I got to go there. So restorative, that was a key word, restorative. And then Jamie, how do you make space for this?
It's a delicate balance. I think as a leader, as well as small business owners, you know, we have to model that with ourselves and our communities that we serve. For myself, I've been learning a lot about burnout and the implications of burnout. It's actually pretty hard. It's the stress that and the mental health that happens to your, like, just the weight of carrying like all these decisions and thinking about people that you're serving, thinking about your small business. It's a lot to carry, and being mindful that we're not super women. Women are by nature phenomenal, but it does take a toll on your body, and having more awareness of that is really critical. So then to what you just said is it's really important to look at what restoration looks like to you and really prioritize that. Folks often tell me, you know, you got to make sure your cup's filled. In order to pour from your cup, you have to make sure it's filled. Otherwise, you're pouring from an empty cup. I would also say this conversation around rest is so critical. There's a movement happening right now that is really saying women of color, people are deserving of rest and restoration, of care, of community. And we have to be able to advocate that not only for ourselves, but for the people we serve and the people that we work for. And that flows into ensuring women have pay equity, ensuring there's paid leave just to have these spaces to rest, and ensuring that we have benefits woven in to make sure that as women go through life experiences, whether it's childbirth or caring for their elders or their families, that we have that expensive time and economic safety net to be able to do that, because we have multiple roles and responsibilities.
Wow, Jamie, you're so right. You know, the council's been talking about paid family medical leave and how important it is for businesses across America to consider that. And I think that would speak to making sure that there's support, whether it's for the leave so that you could take care of somebody or leave to take care of yourself. We really need to build that in somehow. Thank you so much for sharing that. This question was so important. First of all, this conversation was so important, not only to me, but of course to those who are going to view the panel. But creating sisterhood and really having a real conversation about rest, there's nothing like it, Because if we don't talk about it, both the sisterhood and the rest, and the restoration that is required, then we're not building the community. We're not creating the network. We're not creating the path to the sky, and not filling our cups the way we need to. This has been phenomenal. I do have a fun question. I know that we are at time, and if there's anybody who needs to go, I understand. But tell me, as women leaders in your field, what is the best advice you've ever been given and that you would pass along? And or tell me about the last thing you bought or service you procured by a woman-owned business. Let's start with Jamie.
So I'm wearing a lipstick by Cheekbone Beauty. It's an Indigenous woman-owned beauty, sustainable beauty brand, actually located in Canada, owned by Jen Harper. So that's the last thing I bought.
Awesome. Awesome. Giselle.
I mean, Jamie basically like took my line, but I am also wearing, no, I am wearing eyeshadow by a Black owned sisterhood. It's two twin sisters called 241. So that was the last thing I bought by a Black owned women company.
Wonderful. Nicole.
So I'll try to be unique here, although my bow is by a woman-owned business. But I think the best advice or thing of encouragement, because whenever I talk about our community, the work that we do, Black women, small businesses, the stats tend to trend negative. I feel exhilarated in this community. And one of the things our new bow members said that is meaningful and recharge and best advice is getting around a group that celebrates and supports and sees you is the best thing about this community that we've created. We are seen, we're supported and celebrated. So get you a girls group that sees you, loves you, supports for you, cheers for you in the business community. It doesn't get any better.
I second that, Nicole.
Exactly. I second it, third it. That is exactly why we're having this conversation. That was wonderful. Thank you. And Marla.
Yeah. So the best advice I ever got in life or business was to follow your gut. I think, as in tune as we can be to our own sort of gut feelings about what feels right and what feels wrong. And as long as you're kind of operating out of your own integrity, I think things tend to go well. So that's kind of the best advice, whether it be for personal life or for business. And then the last thing I bought from a woman-owned business was a meal from Soul Food, spelled Seoul, like Seoul, Korea. Wonderful Korean restaurant in Tacoma Park, Maryland.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Well, thank you all for this conversation. We all know this is important to recognize that women business owners are a driving force behind our American economy. So it stands to reason that they should have a seat at the table. Most of us will probably agree that it is critical for women entrepreneurs to have their voice heard as market and social conditions continue to change rapidly, and as we recently witnessed and experienced firsthand following the onset of the pandemic. However, long-standing issues persist. As some of these new challenges continue to emerge, this is why NWBC council members remain dedicated to elevating the voices of the 12 million plus and growing number of diverse women business owners across the country. They are our why. You deserve a seat at the table. You deserve to be heard. Our nation deserves to hear your voice. And we don't do this in a vacuum. We do this in collaboration and partnership with groups like WeBank, WIP, AWBC, NABO, and the Bow Collective, and so many others. And let me just add that these persistent issues, exacerbated following by the pandemic, explain in part why NWBC was tasked with the mission to provide annual policy recommendations, which we feature in an annual report to the White House, Congress, and the President, and why the work of the Council remains relevant today. Today's insights will really be instructive to our Council members. Jamie shared a few of our policy recommendations from our fiscal year 2022 report. So all of the learnings we gather, not just from research, but also through engagement with important stakeholders like today's panelists, help serve as a springboard to next year's policy recommendations. So with that, thank you, ladies, for participating in this conversation. Your voice and your work are so important. Let's continue this conversation in the weeks and months ahead. And thank you to everyone for joining today's panel. We encourage you to visit www.nwbc.gov, check out our annual report and policy recommendations, and sign up to receive our newsletter. Don't forget that you can join this conversation too. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Thanks, everyone. I hope you'll stay for our next panel. Have a fantastic day.
What an inspiring session. Women, small business owners, entrepreneurs are and can be the drivers of change. Thank you so much, ladies. There's been a lot of great information, lots to take in, but there is still much more in store. So let's take a quick break. But first, remember to share and tweet out your impressions and feedback before you take that stretch. And special thanks to all the watch party hosts. We so appreciate you sharing all your impressions. Please don't hit that leave button just yet. We have another great discussion with presidents of HBCUs all lined up in just 5 minutes.
Entrepreneurs take risks, and when they succeed, good things happen. Communities benefit and thrive.
It was a big movement in this country, and I became a part of something very exciting.
West Company is one of 2 initial women's business centers that were started with a pilot program.
One of the reasons why it's so unique is because we serve those individuals who have traditionally been underserved.
Women have often been relegated to jobs that don't really pay enough money.
The women entrepreneurs that we assisted were able to bring in more money so that they could have freedom in order to help their children grow and prosper in their own lives.
An organization that helps women in a community, that improves life in that community for everybody.
One of the wonderful things about the Women's Business Center is that you could help women no matter what their economic situation was.
So one of my favorite stories is about a woman who came to us, and her problem was that her father needed to get to dialysis, and there was no non-medical transport service in our entire region. So what did she do? She said, I'm going to start one. That's what this county needs. And we rolled up our sleeves. We got our best advisors together. We sat down with her. She had a vision. We helped her create a plan. And then we stayed with her along every stage of the journey. And that woman in 18 months not only launched her business, but found the resources to have 5 vans going to 3 different counties. That is what we do. We help people reach their dreams.
When West Company showed up, it immediately had customers, clients. Women started finding out, and it was part of it was it had been founded by this large coalition of women that had written that first grant, and helped with that first grant. So there was a large community of women that already knew that this organization was in place.
I think the first thing to remember is small businesses are the backbone of any economy. It's no different in rural or urban areas. The thing that service providers like ourselves do for those small businesses is that we are there for whatever part of the journey they're on.
What we always try to do is to get women involved in advocating for themselves and their businesses.
Getting federal money was an important visibility and credibility for an organization in a rural area that is considered to be an upstart, if you will, to see that the federal government was investing public funds. And then the challenge being to make sure that that continued, that it didn't just become some little project that had its day and went away. It was because it was obvious that women were benefiting and that business communities were benefiting.
OBO and SBA made a commitment to women entrepreneurs decades ago.
So I think it's absolutely critical that communities know that there is that federal investment in their community.
After 35 years, we've learned a whole lot about what entrepreneurs need to succeed. We're going to continue on this learning, and we're going to continue to share this with our next generation of entrepreneurs. Because when an entrepreneur is successful, that means the community is successful, that means the county is successful, that means the state is successful, and so it goes. And the women's business centers are specifically here. We are specifically designed to help that budding entrepreneur be as successful as they can possibly be in the environment in which they live.
Welcome back, everyone. Next is the Making Her Story, HBCU Strengthening Women Entrepreneurs in Underserved Communities. Donald Malcolm Smith, Acting Assistant Administrator for SBA's Office of Women's Business Ownership, will moderate a discussion on how HBCUs will help spur economic development with support of SBA, its resource partners, and women entrepreneurs. This impressive and distinguished group of panelists include Bobby Knight, President of Miles College, and Rosalind Clark-Ortiz, President of Benedict College. And we will cap off this final panel of day one of the SBA Women's Business Ownership Summit with a very special message from a fierce and dedicated advocate for women's business enterprise, the Honorable Congresswoman Nydia Velázquez.
Good afternoon. I'm Donald Malcolm Smith, the Acting Assistant Administrator for the Office of Women's Business Ownership. And it's my pleasure today to bring you Making Her Story, HBCUs Strengthening Women Entrepreneurs in Underserved Communities. Just to share, the opinions by panelists are their own and do not reflect the official standing of the U.S. Small Business Administration or the summit partners. We welcome you to submit questions for our panelists and moderators via the Q&A functions located at the bottom of your screen. We will do our best to answer these questions via our panel discussion and the Q&A function. With that, I am pleased to introduce two phenomenal women leaders who lead HBCUs that just so happen to be hosts of women's business centers. First, I'd like to introduce Bobby Knight, President of Miles College. And I'd like to introduce Dr. Rosalind Clark-Ortiz, President of Benedict College. Today, we'll be discussing the important role that HBCUs have in supporting and creating opportunities for Black entrepreneurs, who are a key part of entrepreneurial ecosystem building, and ensure that we have an equitable, inclusive economy. I'm so excited to host this today, and because it's Women's History Month. And I know it may seem odd, I'm a man leading the Office of Women's Business Ownership, but I like to consider myself an ally who both in deed and action support women entrepreneurs. I come from a family of women entrepreneurs, and if it had not been for my grandmothers and their businesses, I think I can hold true that the college educations that were enjoyed by their grandchildren would not have come to bear. But with that, I like to give both President Knight and President Ortiz, like to give each of you the opportunity to talk about yourselves, your institutions, and then share why did you take on the challenge of implementing a women's business center. I'd like to start with President Knight.
So good afternoon, Donald, and good afternoon to my dear friend, President Rosalind Clark-Ortiz. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. So we're celebrating 125 years this year at Miles College. And when I became president, actually the interim president, back in 2019, I was the first ever woman to lead the institution in almost 125 years, which is really kind of bizarre. And then obviously I became the permanent president back in March of 2020. And I can tell you that during March of 2020 and during 2020, 2021, I got a tremendous amount of support from the female presidents, the HBCU presidents, that really reached out to each other and embraced each other to help us through that, through the COVID-19 crisis and through some other things. So I'm eternally grateful. I've always had very, very strong women in my life, and appreciate, like you, Donald, the role models that those women have provided. But when I accepted the challenge of being president, I did so understanding the potential of the college, of our students, and the community in which we reside. We sit in the middle of Fairfield, Alabama, which is a very small city right outside of Birmingham. They're just right next to each other. But Fairfield has been in bankruptcy for almost the entire time I've been at Miles. And so it's been a challenge getting anything done in the city. But what got me interested in this Women's Business Institute, or the SBA program, was the fact that there were so many women in Fairfield who needed assistance. And I believe that women typically step up to the challenge. And I just felt that bringing this program in would help not just the women, but help the city itself and the growth of the city. Miles is more than an institute of higher learning. It's a community institution, and our goal is, since its inception, was to help the community rise. And so we believe this center can do that. So we're investing, and we're happy that SBA is investing in our women entrepreneurs and in the city and in our college.
Thanks so much, President Knight. President Artis?
Well, good afternoon. Thank you very much for having me. It is absolutely a delight to be with you, and certainly with my sister president. I apologize, we got some background noise. I've just sent a message out to send somebody, probably some man up there making noise. So we've asked them to please stop that, whatever you're drilling, please stop while I'm on a Zoom. But Benedict College was founded by a woman. So Benedict was founded in 1870 by a Northern missionary, Bathsheba Benedict, who took money from her husband's estate. He died rather prematurely in a fire, took $5,000 that she inherited from him, combined with $8,000 of her own money. I love telling that part of the story, of her own money, for a total of $13,000 to purchase an 80-acre slave plantation that is now home to Benedict College. So the notion that land that was once a plantation now educates the descendants of those slaves is a powerful, powerful legacy for our students. And even more powerful is that it took a woman to get that done. Very much like my colleague, President Knight, I am the first woman to serve at Benedict College. So I tell the story in very much the same way. Our experiences are entirely parallel. Founded in 1870, I was appointed in 2017. And so you can see it took about 148 years for them to entrust an institution founded by a woman to be led by an institution, be led by a woman. So that was a very big deal. Many HBCUs boast populations of students that are majority female. When people ask me about the significance of being the first woman president, I say, why don't my young women deserve role models too? 60% of the students on Benedict's campus are women. The national average, particularly for HBCUs, is closer to 70%. Those young women deserve role models as well as our young men on our campuses. And so we're not better, we're just different. And the world turns when there is diversity of thought, idea, experience, and capacity. And so I think
for the institutions fortunate enough to be led by women, there probably is a kinder, gentler atmosphere. And for me, that atmosphere means opportunity. All of my students have the opportunity to learn and grow in classrooms with high quality academic programs, with committed, dedicated faculty and staff. But more than that, we want our students not just to have a good education that enables them to go out and get jobs in the economy. We want our students to be able to create jobs in this economy. So we recognize very early on that so many of our students had what we often refer to as a side hustle. And we wanted to teach those students how to leverage those strengths, their creativity, their entrepreneurial abilities, and create sustainable, scalable businesses that can become more than a side hustle, but really become vibrant businesses that turn around and hire people within those communities. So we've always had that commitment at Benedict College. The Business Development Center preceded me actually at Benedict College. The nuance is the Women's Business Center. We opened the Women's Business Center in the height of COVID, when people, in my opinion, were suffering most. I think, President Knight really articulated that. Our ability to connect one with another during the pandemic was so critically important to all of our just development and health and well-being. But what we saw economically in our state is that 41% of the businesses that were going under in that first year of COVID-19 were women and minority-owned businesses. And so for me, that is a clarion call to do something. We are a cornerstone institution in our community, and so we had to do something. And so that something for us was cutting the ribbon on a women's business center with a very intentional focus on helping women to be successful in business and expanding that. We're in a very rural state, a small state, almost a circle, 2 hours either way, whatever direction you go in. So we created a statewide center so that we have a mobile vehicle that goes out into more rural areas. We're fortunate to be situated in the capital city here in Columbia, but we know that there are a number of rural areas in South Carolina that desperately need that outreach support. And again, that scalable business development expertise, particularly our women. So I am peacock proud to be leading an institution that has a commitment to women and women's business development, and proud of our partnership with the SBA.
Thanks so much. And as the son of a South Carolina native who was born in Columbia and grew up in Spartanburg, thank you so much for all you do for the great state of South Carolina. Well, I'm a proud graduate of the University of Maryland Eastern Shore and Morgan State University. So I know firsthand the impact that HBCUs have on their communities. However, there are many who will probably be watching and participating in our summit that may not be familiar with HBCUs or the impact that they have. Can you expand on the special role that HBCUs serve in their communities? And this time we'll start off with President Artis.
Well, great question. As I alluded to in my opening comments, we are a cornerstone institution. That means we are typically situated in low wealth, largely minoritized communities. And so we become a resource for the community. For example, during COVID-19, Benedict College was a testing site. We were a distribution site for all forms of PPE. We tend to serve and support our communities. We were located near low wealth communities. And so they, by extension, attached to our cell signals, right, to our Wi-Fi signals. We host camps every year. So students are on our campus that are not just sports camps, but science camps and writing camps. They use our pool. We are a community citizen. We are a community partner. And so the value of HBCUs really can't be understated as it relates to the impact, both economic and social impact they make on the communities within which they're located. So if we're going to keep our commitment and maintain that legacy, we have to constantly be evolving in terms of the services and supports that we provide to the communities within which we're located. So we think, again, the Business Development Center and the Women's Business Center are one of the most important forms of outreach because, again, we're situated in a relatively low wealth minority community. If we can create thriving businesses in and around the campus within concentric circles of our community, I think we create thriving communities that change generationally the prospects for the individuals who grow up in this space and, of course, who support our economy more fully.
Thanks so much. President Knight.
Thank you. I have to echo President Artis' comments about the fact that the college provides so much for the community itself. We were also a testing site for COVID. We also provided vaccines when they became available for the community. And it was such a big turnout. And we were really shocked of the void in that part of the community. But so we fill a role not just on the campus. The fact that we had 80 applicants for our SBA Women's Business Center, the first run out, 80, tells us a lot about the need, and we need to expand that. And to expand that, I need more funding. But the need is so great. So right now we have 15 women entrepreneurs that are in the program. It needs to be so much more. Every time I turn around, we're doing and helping, and our students are engaging in the community in many, many ways. They see there is a need and they want to help. It could be starting a business. It could be whatever they want to do. When they ask me, Madam President, can we do? And I'm like, yeah, just let me figure out if I can find the funding for it. But there is so much that we can do to help our community. And this business center is one of those ways we can do it.
Thanks so much. I'd like to remind our participants, we welcome you to submit your questions for our panelists and moderators via the Q&A function located at the bottom of your screen. Well, what we learned during COVID, it confirmed what was already a data trend, that Black women are the fastest growing demographic of entrepreneurs in our country, nearly 2.7 million businesses nationwide. But even with their presence, they often face significant challenges that impact their capacity to not only start their businesses, but sustain their businesses. Can you share a bit about how your institutions seek to support these women, provide them with access to capital, connections to trusted advisors, as well as sharing information that will help them be successful? With this question, we can start with President Knight.
Thank you so much. So the SBA Women's Business Center at Miles College is obviously a centerpiece project of the Miles College Center for Economic and Social Justice. This is just one of the ways we see we can impact the community and women entrepreneurs. I actually serve on the board of Bronze Valley, which is a nonprofit venture capital firm. And my goal is to connect these women. Bronze Valley only looks at women and minority-owned businesses primarily that are in the tech field, but they've expanded that now. So my goal is to connect the women that are coming through our program with angel investors like Bronze Valley or other entities so that they can not only have access to capital, but have more access to people who really know where the money is and how to find it for them. Elevate Her helps women help themselves. And by doing so, they're just not sitting there trying to run a business with nothing but their gut feeling. Our grandparents and our parents did a great job with their businesses that they ran without a lot of capital other than what they raised out of their household. But today there's so much out there. We just have to help these women figure out where it is and how to access it.
Thanks so much, President Knight. President Artis?
It's always a joy to be on a panel with Bobby Knight because you don't have to do any work. She articulates everything so beautifully. So I'll sort of pick up where she's led us with her last response, helping them find access to resources. So we connect with, we call ourselves a community navigator of sorts. We are part of the community navigator network. So we've identified business mentors, women-owned businesses, business owners, successful women business owners who are in residence at our Women's Business Center, who are there to provide consultative support and coaching to our aspiring entrepreneurs. That coaching can range from marketing, business plan development, talent acquisitions, budgeting and finance, as well as grant writing and resource acquisition, bonding, capability expansion, So that seems to be the greatest single impediment when we talk about construction and other ways to contract. That bonding capability is a very big impediment to growth for many, many, many organizations. South Carolina is a manufacturing economy. So we believe the environment is rich for us to be able to play an active role in the supply chain, right? So we have BMW and we have Boeing and we have Michelin and we have Volvo, and we've just recruited VW Scout, which will bring about 4,000 jobs and a couple $1 billion investment into South Carolina. What does that mean for my Women's Business Center? It means there is room for you within this supply chain. What is your product or service? How does it connect to the regional needs, the economic and regional needs of the community? And how do we help navigate alongside you, show you where the opportunities are, introduce you to the right people to be able to connect the dots so that you can develop the capacity to be a cog in that wheel, right? A link in that chain as we think about moving products in and out of the state of South Carolina. And so we're really excited about the possibilities. In terms of short-term capital acquisition, much more rather than your larger loans, we're doing some micro lending, some partnering with the business community. They have made significant investments in our Women's Business Center, which we believe sends a really strong signal that there is a desire to see a more diverse supply chain in South Carolina. And so I think we are just the right organization to be able to coalesce all of those interests at one time and to leverage them in favor of our women and minority-owned businesses.
President Artist, that's fantastic. You actually touched on two issues that we think at SBA are critical to small business development success. And one of those were micro lenders or micro lending. Could you talk a little bit more about your micro lending efforts?
Sure. So they are modest, very modest loan amounts that individuals can qualify for, but there's requirements in terms of training and development. We want to see a comprehensive business plan and strategy. We want to see a T strategy, a growth strategy for that business. We typically are loaning anywhere from $5,000 to $20,000, so very micro, just some startup cost really. But we think that is a wonderful way to get exposed to the lending process in a way that is fully supported by us. Clearly, you're not dealing with the same kind of underwriting that you may be dealing with at a commercial bank. So there's a little bit of a safety net there, but it certainly helps you develop that muscle, right? That business development strategy and planning that allows you to really scale up that business and be positioned for much larger loans should your business call for that. We hope that we achieve profitability with a small, modest investment such that they won't need that. But in the event that we do, when we talk about really large businesses, we want them to be competitive. And so I think, again, that financial acumen that they develop over time with many of the training modules that the SBA partners with us to provide. Credit worthiness, thinking about your workforce benefits, taxes, you name it. All of those considerations can cripple very small businesses. We had one donor, a law firm offers free services, free legal services to all of our Women's Business Center clients. And so whether you are creating an LLC, whether you're developing a partnership or a limited liability company LLC, they're helping develop all of that paperwork for these clients at no charge. And so I think we provide a tremendous number of advantages to our businesses.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I really want to thank both of you for sharing your insights so far. I think what's exciting for me is that you all are making her story. So you're helping women entrepreneurs access capital. You're working in underserved communities. You're having an impact on students as well as the business community. And for me, that's significant because that's a point at which all ships rise. So at the Small Business Administration's Office of Women's Business Ownership, we really work to foster the participation of women entrepreneurs in the economy, especially those who have been historically underrepresented and in many ways excluded. What specific programs, it could be adjacent to the Women's Business Center, the Women's Business Center itself, would you like to see SBA take on to address the challenges impacting Black women and assist them in reaching their highest potential? And how can we partner with you? And I'll turn it over to President Knight.
So thank you for that question. I've got I've got to say, you know, our center is so new. Donald, you came out and did the ribbon cutting with us back in the fall. And I'm so excited about everything I hear that President Artis is doing with her center. I know y'all have been at this longer, but I am really interested in this micro lending piece. I don't know how, I know you probably went out and secured funders. I don't know how it works, but I would love to dialogue about that after this is all over and try to figure out, Donald, if there is a way that you can help us frame that piece as well. That's a big need. I see it with on the Bronze Valley side. It's very specific about the progress that they want to see the companies that come in. So they do startups, but they do there's startups that have some funding and have some customer base, all of that. So typically they're going to do maybe 100 to 300,000. But the businesses that we brought in so far are much smaller, and they need to scale, obviously, but they need funding to help them scale. So I'm really interested in how that works and how we can get involved in that part as well.
Definitely. And I have some ideas right after we hear from President Artis.
Okay. You know, you asked for ideas and suggestions on how SBA can help. And I think, once again, Bobby really kind of nailed it. There are only a handful of HBCUs that are deeply engaged, particularly with women's business centers. There are incubators, but with women as the focus. Morgan State, for example, has a pretty well-developed women's business center. We've been watching them in terms of our development and are always happy to share with my colleague in terms, because we have as she pointed out, a 2-year head start. So some of the lessons learned and pain points that we experience, prayerfully, she will not experience them. And so I think if we can incentivize collaboration within and among the HBCU family in particular, and I know that you have ways to do that, that would be incredibly helpful to us. And then really, as President Knight just indicated, we can bring a business so far. But the fact of the matter is we're an incubator, which means after a particular period of time, after certain benchmarks are met, the expectation is that business launches. And it can be a big leap from modest to no overhead with heavy support within our incubator to launching out into the community. We've tried to provide extension services and coaching and those kinds of things, but it really is about money. When you leave this incubator and launch, you're going to need, fledgling business support. And I think, the SBA certainly can help there. And then finally, as it relates to just federal policy, the kinds of incentives that we provide for businesses at a very high level, having just come through this new, process to bring Scout to South Carolina, for example. Somebody's dying. It's probably over to Alan. I don't know. I'm just joking. I heard an ambulance in the back. But I think the kinds of services and supports that we are able to provide and the extent to which those can be scaled is very helpful. But from a federal policy standpoint, we provide all sorts of incentives to attract businesses into our state and into our community. Are we similarly incentivizing new growth businesses? Right? We're recruiting what we call, the big boxes, the big corporations. We want lots of jobs, lots of economic development. But I think we all know, the stats are very clear, that small business runs this country. Small business is the backbone of this country. And so our policy has to reflect that. Our policy has to be sensitive to the needs of the small business owner that are really trying to scale up and grow, not just financial resources, but all incentives, tax policy. For example, here, we're in a hub zone. And certainly many of your viewers know what a hub zone is. So when you hire people who are from this zone, these zip codes, there are certain incentives that come with that to help grow your business, employ the people that are in the community around you. That's a wonderful policy, right? That encourages economic development in and around our communities and helps those dollars continue to circulate in the communities they most need them for a lot longer period of time. We know that dollars generated by women-owned businesses circulate 7 times longer. in the communities they're generated in than do dollars generated by male or majority owned businesses. So I think from a policy standpoint in this country, we've got to be mindful of that and continue to allow our budget and our public policy to follow that.
Oh, thanks so much. Thanks so much. Any additional comments, President Knight?
So I guess one thing I might add is this. I see so many women struggling to make it, whether they're single mothers or widows, they need an opportunity. And sometimes being in the right place at the right time is all you need, but sometimes you're not there. So you need somebody to kind of pull you up, as Dr. Artis said, and help you with that. And I see this center as having the ability to do that. I'm so excited that we went for this. We're looking to grow this center and do bigger and better things. And I am absolutely going to steal every idea I can from Benedict. And if I have to, Morgan State, I don't care who it comes from, but also just know that we see the need right now in our community, and the need is very, very great. So thank you for having faith in us and giving us that opportunity to put the center and grow the center at Miles College.
So thanks so much for being a partner. And SBA is a full participant in the White House initiative on HBCUs. And as a part of our participation, we are really looking to enhance and increase the capacity of historically Black colleges and universities to increase entrepreneurial capacity, because that's our focus. So we look forward to partnering with you all in the upcoming months to build in the capacity of the other HBCU WBCs and with the larger community of HBCUs. Often our HBCUs aren't successful in applying or acquiring federal grants because they don't have the experience in doing so. And so we want to create a climate by which we can increase representation, because representation matters. So this has been a phenomenal discussion. I know there are a few questions in the chat, and just one that I'll bring forward is, what support do HBCUs need so that you all can continue to make her story? And I'll start with President Knight.
So I've had this question before, and I love the way Dr. Artis answers it, but funding is just at the top. Funding for not just programmatic funding, but funding for scholarships. Our students need assistance. Many of them are first generation to go to college. Over 90% of our students are on a Pell Grant. They need assistance as well. So again, I can only do so much, and I think we do a great job in bringing in funds, but any type of funding for not just the institution, but to help these students complete their education is absolutely critical.
Definitely. Thanks so much, President Knight. President Artis?
So I want to double click on funding. Clearly, resources drives everything in terms of both these kinds of efforts and educational policy and access more broadly, as articulated by my colleague, President. The technical assistance that you hit on is equally important. We are in a moment where there are some aggressive efforts to increase participation on the part of HBCUs in the federal grants process, in the federal contracts process. But if we have not developed the strength internally over time, because that historically has not been the case, that we were at the table, that there were directives to agencies to engage HBCUs in a meaningful way, we haven't developed the chops, as it were. We don't have full departments of grant writers, proposal writers, et cetera. And so I certainly hope that technical assistance can continue to be a part of all that you do at the federal level. We certainly have been grateful for what has been done so far, but I think we're going to have to continue that work. These are very small institutions. Dr. Knight and I both have small, private, historically Black colleges, departments with 1 or 2 people in them. And that includes my grants department, right? And so we need that technical assistance and support. And then incentivizing partnerships across both public and private lines. I think would be very helpful. Many of our public peers have larger research footprints. We're not a minor partner. We want to be an equal partner. A partnership is a mutually beneficial symbiotic relationship. It is not us, them, right? So the extent to which you can facilitate that would be incredibly helpful. And did I mention we needed funding? I thought I started there, but I just want to end there because I think that's really important. Really, the true number 3, because money is really still number 1 for me. The true number 3 is allyship. The fact that you thought it not robbery to convene this conversation today, the thoughtfulness of the questions. I am a stickler for language, and the words that you have used have demonstrated a level of sensitivity to the challenges that we face as HBCUs and as women in particular, and the importance of support and entrepreneurship and business development is clear in the tenor and tone of your questions. So thank you for that. Keep up the good work.
Thank you. And I remain inspired. And President Artis, thank you for dropping the quotable about partnerships. I'm sure there is someone in the audience that grabbed their pen and paper to put that down. So with that, I am grateful. I'm thankful for you all joining me today and joining our audience today. Before we part, I'd like to give each of you an opportunity for any last words you may have, letting our audience know how they can find out more about your institutions of higher education, your HBCU powerhouses. With that, President Knight.
So you can reach us at www.miles.edu. We have so much to offer. I think someone said it best when they said we're a diamond in the rough, but we've been polishing that diamond for 125 years, and pretty soon we're going to be shining bright. So please reach out to me, Bob B. Knight at miles.edu. I respond to every email I get. I'm on social media, on Facebook, Instagram, what else? TikTok, Twitter. I think that's all of them. But we're very supportive of and we just need people to know that we're here and we haven't gone anywhere and we're not going anywhere. So thank you so much for the opportunity to be here.
Thank you, President Knight. President Artis, bring us home.
Similarly, www.benedict.edu, not Bennett, benedict.edu. We love our sister HBCU, but people conflate the two. They're the women's college in North Carolina. We're the co-ed college in South Carolina. Certainly, if you go to Benedict's website, the www.benedict.edu/WBC, Women's Business Center, you will get more detailed information about our Women's Business Center and our incubator efforts. Certainly, as my colleague president has indicated, we are all over social media. I have to tell you, that TikTok thing eludes me. But I have children who run it for me. But certainly I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook, Rosalind Artis, R. Clark Artis, any combination of the two, you will find me there cheering for my students every step of the way. I believe that the days of the best kept secret are long past. I think diamonds are polished, as Bobby indicated, under tremendous pressure. HBCUs have been under tremendous pressure. And as a result of that is a flawless diamond that I cannot wait for you to see. So stay tuned and watch us shine.
Thank you so much, President Knight, President Artis. Thank you so much for your insight, for your quotables, and for sharing how much and how well HBCUs contribute to women's entrepreneurship and the economy. With that, we look forward to working together with you all and other HBCUs to build a more equitable economy for all Americans. Thank you and have a beautiful day.
Now I have the honor of introducing one of our nation's greatest small business champions in Congress, House Small Business Committee ranking member, Nydia Velázquez. She has had a stellar career of firsts, the first woman to chair the House Small Business Committee and the first Puerto Rican woman to serve in Congress. Ranking Member Velasquez has fought hard for women entrepreneurs throughout her career, both as an advocate and as a lawmaker. She has authored, introduced, and advanced dozens of bills and provisions supporting America's small businesses. She leads with passion for our entrepreneurs and works tirelessly to make sure the federal government provides the tools and support they need to succeed. Please welcome Representative Nidia Velasquez.
Hello, I am Congresswoman Nidia Velasquez, Ranking Member of the House Small Business Committee. It's a pleasure to join you today for SBA's second annual Women's Business Summit. Today, we're making the 35th year of SBA support and advocacy for women small business owners. Female entrepreneurs have made incredible progress in that time. Today, women are at the center of the American economy. They comprise nearly half the workforce and own an estimated 42% of all U.S. businesses. Before the pandemic, women-owned businesses employed 9.4 million workers and generated $1.9 trillion in revenue annually. Businesses owned by women of color were thriving, growing at 43%, one of the fastest rates among all groups. COVID threatened the decades of incredible progress female entrepreneurs had made in this country. Throughout the pandemic, women-owned businesses were more likely to close and report a significant decline in the overall health of their companies. But in the face of these unprecedented times, female entrepreneurs persevered to rise above these challenges. Thanks to pandemic relief programs like PPP and COVID EIDL, women-owned small businesses were able to keep staff on payroll and avoid permanent closure. They were also helped along the way by our great SBA resource partners like Women's Business Centers, SCORE Mentors, Small Business Development Centers, and Veteran Business Outreach Centers. So thank you to everyone here today for all you've done to support female entrepreneurs during this difficult time. Because of your efforts, the future is brighter for female business owners. In the aftermath of the pandemic, there have been a record number of small business applications. Women are helping to drive this small business boom. Despite our progress, we still have much work to do. Only about 24% of small businesses' bank loans go to female entrepreneurs. Moreover, when women do obtain loans, the average amount is 33% less than their male peers. From mentorship opportunities to a lack of affordable childcare options, women have long faced structural obstacles to starting and running a successful business. That is why today, during Women's History Month, we must recommit ourselves to tackling these problems head-on and creating a brighter future for female entrepreneurs. In Congress, I am working to strengthen access to capital for women-owned businesses, increase support for the SBA resource partners that serve female entrepreneurs, and ensure that women have ample access to federal contracting opportunities. A strong American economy is dependent on the prosperity of women-owned businesses. When female entrepreneurs can reach their full potential, they innovate, create jobs, and move our country forward. I am excited to work with all of you to ensure women in small business have the support they need to thrive. Thank you again for allowing me to join you today.
Another amazing discussion with some really dedicated change makers. Well, that's it for today. But please remember, we will be back here tomorrow with our Ask the Expert sessions. You won't want to miss day 2 of this information-packed summit. Again, I'm Delia Gonzalez from WUSA 9. Thanks everyone for joining us today, Have a great evening, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.